How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Rum links, zwei, drei, rum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil dich ein in die Arbeit einmeinst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Rum links, zwei, drei, rum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil dich ein in die Arbeiter einmeinst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Rum links, zwei, drei, rum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil dich ein in die Arbeiter einmeinst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades! Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is where we watch the real far left. Not the fake far left, like what you see on conservative Twitter. Not the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is not the real far left. Not the progressives are not the real far left. We rarely, and I mean exceptionally rarely, dabble in the Democratic Socialists of America, because the real radical revolutionary socialists do not consider the Democratic Socialists of America to be actual socialists. And tonight we're actually going to be watching a group that explicitly forbids their members from being a part of the Democratic Socialists of America, because they say the Democratic Socialists of America are reformists that are too close to capitalism, and they're not reformers, they are revolutionaries. We are watching the origin point of where all the crazy things start from. Critical race theory, gender ideology, attacks on parental rights, environmental justice. What else? Reproductive justice, abortion, queer theory, queer Marxism. All these things, every crazy idea. Abolish the police, defund the police, all the campus protests, all the pro-Palestine stuff, or what people call the pro-Hamas stuff, because it's not really pro-Hamas. It's, if anything, it is pro-socialism. If you want to know where every crazy idea in the United States comes from today, it is the people that we watch on Socialism Saturday. And so we take you inside and we show you real training videos that they use in their real organizations. You will see stuff on Socialism Saturday that you will not see anywhere else on the internet, because I am literally the only person covering this stuff that I know of. And by the way, I always welcome this. If you think I'm wrong, if you think other people are covering this too, tell me who. Give me a name. I would love to talk to them, because I've been doing this for years now by myself, and I have yet to find anyone else who knows the groups like I do. I have yet to find anyone else who knows the ideology like I do. I have yet to find anyone else who knows how to find this content like I do. And that's just the way it goes. So if you think you know someone that's covering this stuff, please let me know who they are, and I would love to speak to them, because at the end of the day, there are real problems in the world, and the people that are interested in solving those problems do need to work together. Sadly, most people on the conservative right, or in conservative politics, or pundits or commentators on the internet are more interested in owning the libs and dunking on the libs than actually understanding and solving real problems. It is the world that we live in. And they re on Twitter all day long, and they never do anything of value. Hey, is there anyone new here tonight? Is there anyone new for Socialism Saturday? If you're relatively new to my content, do let us know. The reason that we ask if anyone is new is because watching socialism with us can be a bit overwhelming, especially for new people. And so if you've never watched my content before, or maybe you've only watched 1 or 2 episodes, do let us know in the chat that you're new. If I know that you're new, I'm probably not going to yell at you. And so that should be reason enough. Hey, Bishop is obviously new. Do you know how I know Bishop is new? Does anyone want to guess how I know Bishop is new? Bishop says, "Be happy you live in a republic where you are free to be a communist." Well, Bishop, the thing of it is I know you're new, bro, because the real communists and socialists want to take over our republic, basically overthrow the entire government, get rid of the Constitution, and that's what they're working towards every single day right now. So we're not socialists, bro. We're not socialists. We're not socialists. See, we always get conservative retards every single week on this channel that just don't pay attention, that just don't know how to listen. Or maybe Bishop is one of James Lindsay's retards. Let's do a quick James Lindsay update before we get into the content today, because I know you guys want the latest update. Now here's the thing. James Lindsay, so this past week, we kind of, I won't even say we infiltrated. We didn't infiltrate anything. This was a public chat. So what we did is we found out that James Lindsay was doing an interview on this channel that's run by a woman that I don't really like very much. And so I was like, James Lindsay's doing a live interview. Why don't we come into the chat and ask James Lindsay some questions? So we did just that. The entire thing is on video. It was on Wednesday. You can watch the replay of the stream. It's on demand now on my channel. I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. But what I will say is that my audience was given very specific instructions when we infiltrated James Lindsay's interview. And again, I won't even say infiltrated, because this was a public chat. There wasn't even a subscriber requirement. Anyone could chat in and ask questions. And for me, when I'm doing interviews, I love to be asked questions. I will answer questions about the far left all day, every day of the week. I love being asked questions. James doesn't like being asked questions, and we now know that for sure. Because I specifically instructed my audience. I said, do not be disruptive. Ask questions that are relevant to what James is talking about. Be polite. Do not name call. Do not get into debates with other people in the chat. Our goal is to go and ask James questions about the far left ideology to see if he'll actually answer them. We were on our best behavior. We have the entire thing recorded from start to finish. No one can say we tried to disrupt things. No one can say we were insulting. No one can even say that we didn't ask smart questions, because we not only did we ask smart questions, every single question we asked was directly related to something that James was talking about. So we weren't bringing in stuff that wasn't relevant. It was extremely relevant to the conversation. Not only did James Lindsay refuse to answer any questions from us at all, not only did the mods delete literally every single question, and again, we have this all on video. We have them on video doing that. James is now telling people that I am controlling the Groypers, which I am not. The Groypers weren't even involved in this. I don't even think there were any Groypers involved. And that I am a malignant narcissist and a leftist. Now, James has been calling me different derivations of narcissist, borderline personality disorder. He's been doing that for months. I don't really care about that. But a leftist? A leftist. James. That's just silly, James. I create more anti-communist content on the internet than you do, James, and not by an insignificant degree. I will literally create more anti-communist content in this one singular stream than James Lindsay has created all week. And just to prove that I'm not a leftist in any way, let me just show you the questions. We asked him 26 questions that James refused to answer. Let me show you explicitly, and there are screenshots for all of this. Let me tell you explicitly what questions James refused to answer. Question 1, why do you think revolutionary socialists in the United States denounced Mao? Question 2, do you think this has anything to do with queer Marxists wanting to abolish gender ideology? Leftist? Yeah, if I'm left, I'm not even on the left. I'm about as far right as you can get. James is a classical liberal. If I'm a leftist, then where the fuck is James? James is not even on the map of the left at that point. He's off in some extreme lunacy. Question number 3, James refused to answer. Did you just ban someone for asking if socialists want to abolish capitalism? Question 4, what specifically are communists trying to achieve by elevating class consciousness? Question 5, I'm still confused. What do you mean about class consciousness? Could you explain what it means? Question 6, I saw a video that says communists believe the Constitution uphold capitalism. Is that true? Question 7, do you think queer theory is a Gnostic cult? Questions 8 and 9, what is queer theory? Does it relate to the gender binary? Question 10, have you ever read what the Mary Nardini gang said about queer? Question 11, what does normativity mean? Question 12, how is queer defined? Question 13, what does queer liberation mean? Questions 14 and 15, does normativity have an underlying cause that perpetuates it? What does it stem from? Can you explain what normativity means? Question 16, what does normativity uphold? Question 17, what is the reasoning, the goal, the end game behind all of this? What are the Marxists in education aiming to accomplish in the end? Question 18, does queer liberation lead to the annihilation of capitalism? Question 19, do socialists really disavow Mao? Sometimes we did ask the same question more than once because James kept bringing up the topic. Question 20, doesn't individualism and meritocracy uphold capitalism? Question 21, so they only care about culture and society and not about economic systems at all. Question 22, what is the end goal of raising class consciousness through socialization? Question 23, is Drag Queen Story Hour about abolishing the gender binary? Question 24, why are the mods deleting so many questions? I thought classical liberalism was about debating ideas. Question 25, what does it mean when they call Larry Elder the black face of white supremacy? Question 26, what is the system in systemic racism? James Lindsay could not answer any of those questions. And not only could James Lindsay not answer any of those questions, the moderators deleted them from the chat. And again, I have this all on video. You can watch the stream from earlier this week. We have the entire chat thing on video. All we did was show up and ask questions that were relevant to what James was talking about, that's based on watching radical revolutionary socialism for years in the real world, and James refused to answer them. So I no longer buy into this notion that James Lindsay is a classical liberal. Classical liberals would have welcomed the chance to ask questions. Classical liberals would have welcomed the debate. We weren't rude. We didn't name call. I got name called more by the people in the chat on Deb's side than my people name called. There was no debate in the chat. It was a completely useless conversation. No questions were answered. And then at the end, James Lindsay actually has the gall to say that because I got a group of people together who were not Groypers, and that's no offense to Groypers, it's really not. It's just that the Groypers weren't involved in this. I don't give the Groypers orders. James can pretend I give the Groypers orders all he wants. I don't give the Groypers orders. No one gives the Groypers orders except for Nick. If I tried to give the Groypers orders, they'd just ignore me anyway. I have my own audience. Most of the people in my audience are like, first of all, most of the people in my audience are either women or gay men. Like, that's just reality. Most of the people in my audience are women or gay men. Most of the people in my audience are not on the dissident right. I have a wide range of political beliefs in my audience, everywhere from dissident right all the way over to communists, because communists do watch me because I understand their ideology better than they do. These people aren't Groypers. I'm not a malignant narcissist for asking questions. And I'm sure as shit not a leftist when I create more anti-communist content on the internet than James Lindsay does every single week. And that's been true for years. So the proof is in the pudding, James. The proof is in the pudding. We're not communists here. We're not leftists. You can pretend we are all you want. But people will see the truth. People already are seeing the truth, and people will continue to see the truth. And that is all we're going to talk about drama today, guys, because we are going to jump right into our content. And let me show you what we're watching. We are continuing with the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. So we started with the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists last week. We watched a bunch of their stuff. It was pretty good. We're going to watch a bunch of short videos from them. And what's actually cool is they did some sort of Marxism training school. They called it Socialist Summer Session. Now, we don't have the first one, but they have the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and the fifth one. So we have 4 different videos to watch from the Seattle Revolutionary Socialist Summer School. We're going to learn about Marxism and oppression. We're going to learn about internationalism and revolution. We're going to learn about the Revolutionary Party, and we're going to learn about the tradition, the political tradition of the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. And that's what we're going to watch tonight. We're going to listen to what real radical revolutionary socialists believe in their own words. We're going to listen to the things that they teach each other when they think that no one else is paying attention. That's what we're doing here. So I asked earlier, I'll ask again, are there any new people here? Please let us know if you're new, guys. I cannot emphasize this enough. Please let us know if you're new. Hey, Alex, busy tonight. Checked in for the intro. Carlin is right 26 times over. You owe Carlin twice this much. Jimmy Linney. Hey, thank you for starting us off with a nice big super chat, Alex. Now, guys, as a reminder, I do have a stream super chat goal, which I think is a modest goal of $100. I do all this stuff for free. If you guys appreciate the work I do and you want to keep me in business because I am 100% funded by you, please feel free to send in a super chat. Now, I am raising a little bit of money because we are going to raise money for the Carlin is Going on Vacation Fund. And it's not going to be a normal vacation. And I will be creating content from the experience that I am planning. Content will be created, but if you want to chip in and, maybe help us create some extra special content, please feel free to do so via form of a super chat. I might be sending up a separate crowdfunding thing or like Cash App or something like that if people want to donate. The reason I say this is not that I need people to pay for my vacation. I don't need you to pay for my vacation, but people have actually asked me about this because my audience likes to take care of me. I haven't had a damn vacation in years, and my audience likes to see me take care of myself because they know if I don't take care of myself, then I have a nervous breakdown on the internet and I start to go insane, all over the place, everywhere, all at once in less than a month. And it's going to be great. And I'm not saying any more about that right now because you don't need to know about that right now. All you need to know is that there will be something happening sometime soon after the election. We got to get through the election. But if you want to donate to me not going crazy, please feel free to do so, or just do it because you like the work I'm doing. I appreciate that too. Another way you can donate to support the work I'm doing is by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. This is where you will find all of my breakdowns about the far left ideology in plain English. Unlike anything James Lindsay has ever done, I will explain to you what the left believes and what they think and what they're doing in plain English in ways that anyone can understand it. My writing is simple. It is easy to understand. It is fast to read. I've designed it that way. It's not meant to be like dumbed down or anything, but I think that a lot of people are busy and a lot of people don't have time to wade through these big ass documents. And so I'm trying to make it really easy for everyone. I also want to remind people I am working on my next book, which is going to be called Re-Education, the Definitive Anti-Communist Guide to Decoding the Left. I am committed to getting this shit done before I go on vacation. I am publishing drafts. Now, I know I haven't published anything this week. It's not that I haven't written anything. It's just because I haven't published anything. But there will be drafts going up of the book because what I'm doing is I'm publishing the drafts in real time. So you can actually get access to the content in the book before it even becomes a book. You're getting access to the content as I'm writing it. So there will be a bunch of stuff going up this weekend. I apologize for the lack of updates. It's not because there hasn't been writing going on. It's been because I just haven't been doing the finishing touches and the editing and all that stuff. And so I'm going to be doing that, going to be getting a whole bunch of stuff up. And the book is cooking, guys. It's coming together. It's looking pretty good. I really want to get this done. I'm hopeful to get it done, most of it done by the end of the month. I definitely want to get it done before I head out on vacation. And that way, hopefully there'll be a book in some form before the end of the year that provides people with access to this information, because this is one of the things that people have asked me for. They've said, Carlin, is there a way that I can get up to speed on your content quicker than what you can do on a stream? Well, this book is going to be the way to get people up to speed on my content. It was requested by everyone. I was originally going to write it next year. I moved it up because I got so many requests for it. So this is what I'm working on, and I would really appreciate it if you want access to the early drafts before they even become part of the book, so you can see the information come together in real time. Head over to speaksocialist.substack.com. This is a separate standalone Substack. It is a premium Substack for $10 a month, $100 a year, because you guys are funding the book, because that's the way we're doing things from now on. I no longer trust anyone or any organization or anything like that. The people want Autists for Capitalism shirts. All right, I'll see what I can do. Hey, speaking of shirts, you can also pick up some cool merch in the Unwoke art store, including the new Marxism is Evil yard sign. And for about another week and a half only, you can get the Marxist anti-communist Halloween shirts, and we have them in shirts, sweatshirts, all sorts of stuff. We've got Marxism is coming for your soul. We've got collectivism. We've got everyone is equal until they're not. And then we've got the Marxist utopia of the dead. You can find all these designs over in the store, and they come on t-shirts, they come on sweatshirts, they come on pint glasses, they come on mugs, they come on stickers, lots of other great stuff in the Unwoke art store too. And of course, we will be gearing up for the holidays. My merch makes great gifts. I'm just saying, people love it. So you can check that out in the Unwoke art store right now. And of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing. And now let's get into things, shall we? I need everyone to mount the like button if you have not already. We are going to be working our way through content from the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. Now, if you are new here, or you have never been to a Socialism Saturday stream, let me give you a little primer that's going to help you navigate this experience. Here we go. There are rules in this chat. This is not like a normal stream on the internet. There are rules in this chat because you are in my class. You have walked into a classroom today. I am the teacher in the class. You are the students in the class. I expect people to behave like adults. I expect you to behave like you are actually in a class in the real world. If you walked into a classroom in the real world and you started yelling and shouting and saying, you're wrong and I'm right and this is all the reason I'm right and you're a communist and blah, 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 you would get kicked out of the class right quickly. And exactly the same thing is going to happen here. If you start creating problems in my chat when I'm trying to run a class, you're going to get called out. You're going to get kicked out really quickly, and we don't put up with with that shit. We do take this seriously. We do have fun. We drink beer. I'm going to be drinking cider tonight. You're welcome to drink whatever you want. And we do have a good time, but we also do take this seriously. And I do ask that other people take this seriously as well. Number 2, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the chat. Now, as a reminder, you are in my house, so I can do whatever the F I want. If you are being a dick, if you are insulting people, if you're causing nonsense, you better expect that you're going to hear about it from me, because you're in my house and I can do whatever I want. You don't have to be here. If you don't like my tone, if you don't like the way I teach, if you don't like the things I say, you can just get up and leave. There's a million other things you can watch on the internet. You don't have to cause problems here. Number 3, no whining. I don't want to hear it. I don't have kids for a reason, and that's just the way it's going to go. And so I don't want to hear whining from children, and I don't want to hear whining from people in my chat. If I ask you to stop doing something, just stop doing it. And if you argue or complain, then you're not going to like the end result of that. Number 4, and I cannot emphasize this enough, our job here is to listen. I ask that people try to refrain from debunking the socialist. It will not accomplish anything. If you think you're telling us something about socialism that we haven't heard before, then you should stick around, because you're probably going to hear someone else say that thing at least 3 more times before the stream is done. We hear debunking all the time. It makes no difference. It doesn't actually help us learn anything. Every second that you spend trying to debunk the socialist is a second that you do not spend trying to understand the socialist. So our goal here is to listen and to understand what they believe from their perspective. That doesn't mean we agree with it. We don't agree with it. We think these people are crazy. As again, I'm not a communist. The people here aren't communists for the most part. There are onesies and twosies every once in a while. But our goal is to listen. Our goal is to understand. If you do not listen, if you do not understand your enemy, then you can never defeat them. Lastly, if you break my rules, you will probably get a warning unless you're really belligerent. If you continue to break the rules, you're going to be permanently banned from my chat. I do not give second chances often, so if you don't want to be permanently banned from my chat, don't break the rules in the first place, and we will all be fine. We will all be fine. All right, all right, all right. See, I love chats like this. Carlin is right. Yes, yes, I am. Cheers, DJ. Cheers. Love it. Love it. All right, guys, we're going to be doing 4 classes tonight from the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. And so we are doing their Socialist Summer School. We're going to see how this goes. We are starting with this class called Marxism and Oppression. Why is the working class so divided? What do Marxists respond? How do Marxists respond and act in the face of oppression and injustice? This class is a little bit older. It's about 3 years old. So that's okay. We don't mind that. It only has 15 views. I love stuff like this. Now, as a reminder, guys, don't be confused. Just because it doesn't have any views on YouTube doesn't actually mean anything. Because these classes took place on organizing calls in Seattle that had significantly more people on the organizing call that then watch it on their YouTube channel later, okay? So the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists, and in Seattle in general, it's a very socialist city. This is where the Chaz was, of course. So just because that it has a low view count, do not let that trick you into thinking that they don't have an impact. They do have an impact. They literally took over several blocks in their city for an entire summer. That was these people. If anyone remembers the Chaz, you will know how much impact these people can have. And YouTube views don't actually mean nothing. What goes on the internet is completely disconnected from what actually happens in real life. And a lot of people don't understand that on the internet, but that's just the truth. If these people had no impact, they wouldn't have been able to take over several city blocks in the city of Seattle in the summer of 2020. Average person is in Seattle, and he says the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists are very influential here. People just don't see it. All right, so let's get this party started, guys.
Perfect. And I'll go ahead and set my name as well.
It's quite a haircut. That's queer,
And
a queer
see if I can
haircut,
share
by the
my
way.
Screen here. Share screen. It says I.
Steve, can you give Justice co-host abilities? I, as a mere co-host, sadly cannot grant you permission.
Gotcha.
Okay.
We got it? All right, great. I see it. Okay. So I want to share this PowerPoint presentation. Let's go ahead and start from the beginning here. Can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a Marxist perspective on oppression. Really just trying to break down. I'm going to go through a little bit of, just an overview, very like introductory, Marxism 101. What is, the base, the superstructure, and where does oppression fit into the Marxist perspective on, historical materialism and all the kind of Marxist concepts of how we kind of conceptualize history and most importantly, struggle today and the goals of revolution and the many different forms of oppression, some of which are very familiar to Marxists and theory, and others are actually even
I think that would be a hierarchy. I think that would be. Hopefully they show us what that looks like on the next slide.
Less discussed in the kind of core of Marxist theory as it is often conceived of. But on the principles, let's get to our second slide here. Capitalism, as many economic systems, has many different social hierarchies beneath it. This is a very famous kind of portrait.
Hang on. The pyramid of the capitalist system. Bot, can you try to find that for me? Because I can barely make this out, but this actually looks like a really great illustration. Can you? Yeah, I mean, this is a hierarchy, right? So what the left believes is that capitalism creates all hierarchies. So they are very literally showing you what they call it the pyramid of the capitalist system. Yeah, according to James Lindsay, they only rarely mention capitalism. Okay, James. Yep. Okay. Yep. Fine. Bot found it. Look at this. Hang on. Bot is the chief investigative officer for my cult. Let's just pull this up here so we can all see it. Thank you, Bot. We appreciate it. Let's see. Capitalism, we rule you, we fool you, we shoot you, we eat for you, we feed all, we work for all, we feed. So these are the oppressed workers down here. And they're holding up the bourgeois, including religion. And the monarchy and all that stuff. And the bankers. I bet that's the bankers up there. The Pyramid of the Capitalist System is a common name of a 1911 American cartoon caricature critical of capitalism, copied from a Russian flyer. So this was pre-Bolshevik Revolution. The graphic focuses on the stratification of social class. Thank you, Bot. Appreciate you finding that for us.
Done by the IWW, kind of iterating the different classes, which is the kind of primary lens through which we view hierarchy under capitalism.
Hierarchy!
And under all economic systems, there are different economic classes which wield different amounts of power.
Okay, so for people who are new, the goal of Marxism is to eliminate all hierarchy. They believe that capitalism created all hierarchy. Hierarchy is when some people have more access to resources than other people. They have more money than other people. They have access to private property where other people don't. They are male versus female. They are white versus black. They are normative versus queer. They are able-bodied versus disabled. Things like that. Yeah, but this is crude communism, according to James Lindsay. It isn't a high-level Gnostic communism led by Oprah-summoning Archangel Michael, who is a demon in reality. Yeah, that's all what James Lindsay believes, but we actually hinge into reality, and we know that the real far left believes that capitalism creates all hierarchies. The goal of equity is to flatten the hierarchies. It is to make all resources available to everyone. And that is across every single problem that you see the far left creating. That's what abolish the police is about. That's what reproductive justice is about. That's what critical race theory is about. Gender ideology, queer theory, environmental justice, universal health care, attacks on parental rights, attacks on public education, stuff like that. All of these things go back to the idea of capitalism has created all hierarchies in society, and the goal of equity is code for Marxism, is to flatten all hierarchies and to give everyone access to all the same resources. I have trouble with their logic about hierarchy. What are you having trouble with? You need to be specific with your questions. Be more specific. What are you having trouble with? I'm not asking you to agree with them. You might be having trouble because you think I want you to agree with them. I'm not asking you to agree with them. I'm asking you to understand them. So what is confusing? We're going to wait. What is confusing? Guys, when you ask questions in my chat, I will answer the questions, but please be prepared if you don't ask a question. Okay, but okay, so I already know what your problem is. I'm going to be very blunt about what your problem is. You are not listening. The reason I know you're not listening is you didn't actually answer the question that I asked you. I asked you a very specific question for a very specific reason. What is confusing about capitalism creating all hierarchies? That is the question that I need you to answer. I only need you to answer that question. What is confusing about capitalism creating all hierarchies? Welcome. Confusing to me is how do they think to get there? New to this. Okay, again, you've got to ask a more specific question. What do you mean? How do they think to get there? What do you mean by that? Okay, that's not actually the answer to the question that's not answering the question I asked. Again, I'm going to tell you what your problem is. You're not listening. What is confusing to you about the idea that socialists believe that capitalism created all hierarchies? This is the last chance I'm going to give you. I'm already being very patient. We're holding up the entire stream here, but I need you to listen. This is why I tell you to listen at the very start of the stream. You haven't answered the question that I've asked you yet, and I've asked you several times now. What is confusing to you about socialists believing that capitalism creates all hierarchies? I need you to use your words. I need you to speak in complete sentences. I need you to act like you're interested in learning the answer. Because if you're not interested in learning, there's nothing I can do to help you. But you have to come and be prepared to actually engage in a discussion. I welcome all questions, guys. I really do. But if you're not going to work with us, if you're not going to ask questions that make sense, there's nothing we can do to help you. We're still waiting for an answer, bro. The entire show has stopped for you. No. No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no. No. What is confusing about capitalism creating all hierarchies? We're waiting for you. You were the one that said you were confused. We are offering you help. But if you are choosing not to engage, you might as well not be here. So, what is confusing? We are waiting for you. We are not moving on. I mean, we can move on, but if we move on, I'm going to ban you. Like, let me just be blunt. If we move on and you refuse to engage in the discussion that you started, I'm going to ban you because you've wasted my time. And you've wasted the time of other people on this stream. So I'm going to ask you one more time. What is confusing to you about the fact that the left believes that capitalism created all hierarchies? I welcome all questions, guys, but if you ask questions and then you completely disengage, I'm just going to assume that you're a troll. Because hierarchy existed before private property. Okay, again, the problem is that you are trying to make socialists fit into your worldview. This is the problem. I am not asking you to agree with them. Socialists, by the way, do not believe that hierarchy existed before private property. Socialists don't agree with you on that. Your job here is to listen to them and to understand the world from their perspective. It is not to try to fit them into your worldview. They do not agree with you about how you see the world. They have a completely different set of values. So if you're trying to make socialists fit into your reality, that's not going to work, and you're going to exist in a perpetual state of confusion. Now we're going to move on.
And they form hierarchies to, help maintain their control and their rule. The people at the bottom of the hierarchy have no real say over the entirety of the capitalist system, if we're looking at the lens and perspective of class hierarchy. But the people at the top reap all the benefits and make all the rules. And then there are other people at various stages of the hierarchy that have other goals, but they all work towards ultimately maintaining the system as a whole and the people at the top. So the class hierarchy is uniquely different, and I'll get into it, to all the other hierarchies because the working class has this unique element of being so close to, and its relation to the means of production that it has and it's such a large class that it has the ability to enact its will to overthrow the rest of the hierarchy. That's the core fundamental understanding of what is Marxism, is the working class organizing themselves to overthrow the hierarchy that currently exists to serve the capitalist class.
So this is a question that James Lindsay refused to answer the other day. We asked him this question twice. James Lindsay on Deb Philman's podcast talked about how the job of the left was to, or the goal of the left rather, was to raise class consciousness. And then we asked him 2 times on 2 separate points in that discussion, what is the goal of raising class consciousness? Why are they trying to do that? What is the point of that? He just explained what the point is. The goal of raising class consciousness is that socialists believe that they cannot overthrow capitalism or abolish capitalism unless they raise the class consciousness of the entire what they call worker class, or the class that doesn't own private property. The bourgeois class, the capitalist class, they are the private property owners. The worker class, the proletariat, the oppressed, they are the non-private property owners. They don't have access to resources or wealth or any of these other things that the bourgeois class have access to. So there are a lot more people under the socialist ideology that are in the worker class than there are in the bourgeois class. So in this way, if they can teach people, hey, you guys can just work together to overthrow your oppressors. That's what raising class consciousness is. It's about waking as many of the workers up to understand that they are an oppressed class under capitalism, and if they all just work together, then they can overthrow their evil capitalist oppressors. That is the goal. The reason that James Lindsay would not answer that question about why are they trying to raise class consciousness through socialization is because the goal of raising class consciousness is to abolish capitalism. That is the only goal. That is the only goal they ever have. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? Let me know.
But there are other social hierarchies that are part of that. The working class is not homogenous, and no society operates on just one simple hierarchy of
okay. Again, you are the one that's making this harder on yourself than it needs to be. And I'm going to say this because there's probably other people watching that are doing it too. You are making this harder on yourself than it needs to be. You have this box. You have this way you see the world. The socialists have a different fucking box. They have a completely different box. You are trying to take the socialists and put them in your box. The socialists aren't going to fit in your box. They don't want to be in your box. They don't agree with your box. What you need to understand is that your box is not the only way to see the world. They are in this box. They see the world this way. So you're trying to make them come over here. It's not going to work because they have a completely different set of values. You have to put yourself in their shoes. That's not to say you have to agree with them. We don't agree with them. That's fine. But you are going to continue to be confused until you figure out that they have different values than you do. They do not see the world the way you do. And that, quite frankly, your perspective is not the only perspective that exists in the world. What if the working class owns property? They don't, by and large. I mean, here is what is defined as private property ownership. Your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your ability to own intellectual property, your ability to own a private business, whether that private business be big or small, your parental rights, your individual liberties. What I mean when I say that they don't, by and large, is that most people in the working class that are targeted by the far left do not own enough of what they consider to be bourgeois property in order to generate wealth. If you own a home, if you own a business, if you have kids that you insist on having parental rights over, if you have had property passed down to you from your parents or your grandparents, you're not part of the working class. You're not part of the working class according to them. If you have a high-level position in some organization somewhere, or if you make a lot of money, you're not part of the working class. If you have generational wealth, inherited wealth, you're not part of the working class. They're talking about a completely different set of people. Most of the people they're talking about rent, they don't own. Most of the people they're talking about have never been the beneficiaries of generational wealth. Most of the people that they're talking about don't own businesses. That's who they're talking about. And if you do have those things, then you are not part of the working class, according to them.
Class exploitation. And so for all of these other forms of hierarchies, we label them oppression. There are so many that it's, you can't really get into it. But
they already consider individualism and meritocracy to be forms of private property that will be abolished under capitalism. So in some respects they already do, because if you have individual skills, that's individualism, that's meritocracy, and those things are going to be abolished when capitalism is abolished.
As an example, that patriarchy and the oppression of women under Western European society and our modern society and many societies throughout history, even as economic conditions and structures have changed, patriarchy and the rule and the dominance of men over women in determining things like childcare and hierarchy, and bodily autonomy and population.
All right, I want to make sure people listen to this. They're talking about the gender hierarchy. So what they believe is that capitalism created a gender hierarchy where men were on top because they had access to all the money and all the power. Women were on the bottom of the hierarchy because they were relegated to the home, where they did the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of workers. That's also known as raising kids. And what they want to do is abolish the gender binary. Another name for the gender binary is the patriarchy. If they abolish the gender binary, they level the hierarchy and everyone has the same. Now listen to him say it.
No society operates on just one simple hierarchy of, class exploitation. And so for all of these other forms of hierarchies, we label them oppression. There are so many that it's, you can't really get into it. But as an example, that, patriarchy and the oppression of women under Western European society and our modern society and many societies throughout history, even as economic conditions and structures have changed, patriarchy and the rule and the dominance of men over women in determining things like childcare and hierarchy, and bodily autonomy and population control, etc., has been pretty consistent throughout history, has changed in different forms and different structures, but is nonetheless a social hierarchy that still is maintained and operated under capitalism.
Oh!
Other hierarchies exist to oppress.
The patriarchy is a social hierarchy that is operated and maintained under capitalism. That means that all gender inequality is a result of capitalism. Does everyone understand that? Let me know if you don't. Dragon Balls, thank you for the super chat. This is why they control the schools. They can reprogram their minds away from the nuclear family and disrupt the system, challenging gender, etc. Exactly. Thank you, Dragon Balls. Appreciate it. Everything always comes back to capitalism, guys. Every single time, without fail. It always, 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 always comes back to capitalism.
Different sexualities. So we see, this heteronormativity, this particular form of a sexuality between heterosexual couples, and around it, the structure of the nuclear family, upheld in all sorts of different forms. The nuclear family in a specific form, but the different iterations of this nuclear family can be changed and interchangeable. But nonetheless, there is still...
He just said that the nuclear family is a product of capitalism. Did everyone pick up on that? The reason they want to abolish the nuclear family is because they believe that the nuclear family is literally the reproduction mechanism for capitalism. Capitalism created the nuclear family when it put women in the home during the unpaid labor of raising the nuclear family. The nuclear family is also privatized. You can pass wealth through generations within the nuclear family, and so that's bad, because if you have generational wealth, then that means that some people are going to have more access to resources than other people, which creates a fundamental inequity, which means that the nuclear family sustains the fundamental inequities of society. Everyone catch on to that?
Form of a sexuality between heterosexual couples, and around it, the structure of the nuclear family, upheld in all sorts of different forms. The nuclear family in a specific form, but the different iterations of this nuclear family can be changed and interchangeable. But nonetheless, there is still at the very top a particular type of sexuality that is meant to, be upheld, and all other forms of what is the term? Deviation. That's the term. Deviation from that particularly heteronormative form. Man, woman, in a house together, raising a child together, maybe two children. All deviations beyond that are pushed to the bottom of the hierarchy, and oftentimes criminalized throughout history. Can be met with violence, can have their children taken away from them if they're discovered different forms of, relationships, etc. And we see similar thing. And, I kind of brought the image here of the multiracial working class to identify that perhaps the most well-known pervasive social hierarchy under American capitalism is racial hierarchy and racial oppression. And it is
How did capitalism create racial hierarchy and racial oppression? He just said this is under American capitalism. So that should give you a hint. How did capitalism, according to socialists, create racial hierarchy and racial oppression? This is a pop quiz for the chat. See, now you're moving, aren't you? Slavery. Slavery is how capitalism created a racial hierarchy and racial oppression, because slavery was about private property ownership. It was about white people owning black people as a form of private property. The white people were the bourgeois property owners. The black people were the owned private property. Slavery then created systemic racism. Systemic racism is not a reference to skin color. It is a reference to the system that upholds racism. The system that upholds racism is the system that created it in the first place, which means capitalism, private property ownership. They believe that you cannot fix racism in America until you abolish capitalism. And as long as capitalism exists in America, there will always be racism.
Well-known pervasive social hierarchy under American capitalism is is racial hierarchy and racial oppression, and it is the division of all people in our society into different racial categories. And then, you know, there are stereotypes assessed with them. There's, you know, historically has, you know, and today are various legal forms of discrimination, many different facets of how this infects our society. But the most important thing to understand is, from the Marxist perspective, all of these different hierarchies have a role to play in perpetuating the fundamental hierarchy and exploitation that exists under capitalism. So the rule of the minority is enforced through all these other hierarchies. I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit here to discuss what I thought was an excellent kind of analogy to help break this down. So we are often taught, you know, the kind of liberal view of this is just that there are many different forms of oppression on our society. And because of your identity.
Hang on. Oh, I like this super chat. Do you and James Lindsay have fundamentally different perspectives? Yes. Yes, we do. We have fundamentally different perspectives. First of all, I understand this stuff way better than James Lindsay does. Secondly, I believe the very best way to learn about the left is by studying what the left says and does in the real world today. I do not believe that going back and reading the philosophy papers that you cherry-picked from dead philosophers that are 50, 100, 150, 200 years old is the way to learn about what the left is doing in the real world today. James Lindsay's methodology is fundamentally flawed in that he goes back and cherry picks things that are convenient to the narrative that he is trying to sell. James doesn't even know about queer anarcho-communist subculture, which is where a lot of the queer activists today are actually influenced from. James doesn't look at any literature from queer anarcho-communist subculture at all. We view that extensively. James doesn't even know it exists. I only and exclusively work with real-world evidence. So I work with real-world videos like what we're watching here, training videos that real socialist activists use to train people in the real world so that you know exactly what they're saying. And they will tell you what they're influenced by, and they will tell you what they believe. And that is completely different than going back and finding a philosophy paper that was published in an academic journal that no one ever read, that isn't even influential on the left today, which is exactly what James does all the flipping time. Another way that James Lindsay and I are different is that James refuses, absolutely goddamn refuses, to say the word capitalism, to explain what the word capitalism means, to explain how they define private property, to explain all of the things that are going to be disrupted in the world when these people win. James Lindsay has no idea how close these people are to winning. He has no fucking clue at all. And every single thing that James Lindsay says about Gnosticism is absolute bullshit. Every single time James Lindsay brings up Gnosticism, anything, it is something that he has entirely created. It is a fantasy. It is not backed up with any real world information at all. I have gone undercover at leftist events multiple times. James Lindsay has never gone undercover at leftist events. I infiltrate online events that leftists hold all the flipping time. James Lindsay has never done that. I have listened to more communist and socialist training than anyone else in the world that's an anti-communist. James Lindsay has no idea what they say in the real world. So do we have fundamentally different perspectives? You bet your ass we do. We are not even close. He is not even in the same fucking ballpark that I'm in. We're not even in the same league. I am literally years ahead of him. He has no understanding of what the real left is doing in the real world. He has no understanding of who the real activists are. He has no understanding of where the real problems are coming from. He doesn't explain this to his audience at all. He complains all the time. And P.S., he calls me a leftist. James calls me a leftist and a malignant narcissist for pointing this out. And not for nothing, but I absolutely have a bigger sword than James Lindsay does. Every day of the week. So I would welcome people in the chat to offer their perspectives on this as well. Let him know. Do you guys think I have a different perspective than James Lindsay? James and I are not on the same team. James and I have not been on the same team in a very, 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 very long time. If anything, I view James as completely and totally counterproductive to actually beating the left in the real world. Thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it.
You know, how you fall along that spectrum of, you know, what is your race, what is your gender, what is your sexual orientation. You may be feeling different intersecting oppressions. And in the liberal view, class is just one of those many facets of who you are that kind of has its own forms of oppression tied with it. You know, you are discriminated against in, you know, the way you dress or look or act or, you know, talk, things like that can be class indicators.
And not for nothing, we tried for a long ass time to play nice with James. We didn't go right into flaming James publicly on the internet. We tried for a long ass time, for literally, I tried for years to play nice with James. I tried for literally years. And then my community and I tried for the better part of a year to play nicely with James. Once I finally started telling my community, like, here's what's going on, we tried for a year to play nicely with him before we started flaming him on the internet. It didn't work. James wasn't interested. Because James has masters that he is beholden to, and that is the final reason that I'm different than James Lindsay. I have no masters that I'm beholden to. I am completely 100% grassroots funded by normal people. I don't take money from Turning Point USA. I don't take money from Moms for Liberty. I don't take money from any political organization at all. I am almost completely non-political, by the way. I don't even care who wins the presidential election. I don't care. I don't think either of the candidates are going to do anything about the problems that I care about. So, well, he is having a giant meltdown over it. So, I mean, apparently it's doing something. We're getting more of a response by flaming James than we ever got by trying to play nice with him. So maybe we're exposing to people who weren't aware that James is full of shit because now he's having a giant ass meltdown almost every single day. And that's his own fault, man. That's his own fault. Like I said, I tried to play nicely with the guy for years. He didn't want to listen. We tried as a community to play nicely with him for a year. He didn't want to fucking listen. You get what you get, bro? If you were learning the piano, James would give you piano construction history books and Carlin would teach you scales and how to read music. That's it. Maria, that is exactly right. I would say, sit your ass down at the piano. We're going to go over, do you know how to read music? Let me teach you how to read music. We're going to learn how to play like chopsticks or whatever. London Bridge is Falling Down, like whatever, like simple song. And we're going to start learning how to actually play the piano. James is going to give you a history on the construction of the piano. He's going to talk about the evolution of the piano. He's going to talk about how the piano is a Gnostic sex cult. But he's not going to teach you how to play the piano. I'm going to teach you how to play the piano.
But the actual perspective that we need to have, and so in that way, the liberal view is that if our society is maintaining this hierarchy as a analogy of this man with a chainsaw being those at the top of the hierarchy and using that saw to cut down the great tree, which is the whole of the working class, the vast majority of people at the bottom of the pyramid of whatever hierarchy. If we understand that saw to be our current economic structure, our current laws, our current government, etc., the various wood chippings that are flying off are kind of the different forms of these oppressions. So if the saw is capitalism, the wood chippings that come off, the sawdust, is racism, is sexism, right? And the capitalist is drilling away at the wood, and we see like racism and sexism come off of this.
So he literally just said again, capitalism is creating racism. Capitalism is creating sexism. Capitalism is the saw The wood chippings that the saw creates are all the different problems in the world. Racism, sexism, all the different oppressions that they talk about, all the identity politics stuff. Does everyone understand that? Let's listen again. That was actually a really great analogy. Because again, guys, and this is another reason that I'm different than James Lindsay, I state the problem clearly. James refuses to use the term capitalism. He says that capitalism is but an elementary analysis of what's going on. No, they talk about capitalism all the flipping time. They believe capitalism is at the core of the problem. And if you want to know why the left is doing what they're doing, you have to always start with the assumption that they believe capitalism created some sort of problem. All of the problems that they're trying to fix are a result of capitalism. Everything the left does is a result of trying to overthrow capitalism. The tree, you didn't listen. Gray one, you also have a problem with listening, by the way. You didn't listen. The tree isn't capitalism. The saw is capitalism. Gotta listen. Ears open, mouth shut. You missed something because you weren't listening.
Of whatever hierarchy, if we understand that saw to be our current economic structure, our current laws, our current government, etc., the various wood chippings that are flying off are kind of the different forms of these oppressions. So if the saw is capitalism, the wood chippings that come off the sawdust is racism, is sexism, right? And the capitalist is drilling away at the wood, and we see like racism and sexism come off of this. But the reality,
you see racism and sexism come off the wood as a result of the evil capitalist using the capitalist saw to cut down the tree. I'm in the UK. It seems people don't realize they're social. You can't reach socialists. And listen. I'm sorry. The UK is lost. I'm really sorry. Honestly, like socialism in the UK is way worse than it is here. You have no opposition conservative party. Like your conservative party is socialist. And so what I would say to you is, first of all, you have to be smart because you don't want to go to jail for doing something stupid. Okay? So always be mindful of that. Do not sacrifice yourself in the UK and put yourself in a position where they can quite literally lock you up for saying things because you don't have freedom of speech over there. And it pains me to say that. Like, I'm really sorry, but like that's my first piece of advice is do not sacrifice yourself for this. What I would also tell you is you cannot deprogram people who are in a cult. Our goal, and this is true in America too, our goal is never to deprogram socialists. It's not going to work. We will never, ever, 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 ever be able to deprogram these people. Maybe onesie and twosies will wake up here and there, and that's fine. Our job is to learn as much about the left as possible, to learn how to explain what they are doing in plain English, and then to go out and talk to our friends and family about what is going on. And then to teach as many people who are not socialists as possible about what is going on. We don't need to wake up socialists. We need to wake up everyone else. Because most people think they know. They think they know what socialism is. They have no fucking idea. Most people think they know it's bad. No. It is so much worse than what most people understand. So we need to learn as much as possible. We need to learn how to explain it clearly and simply. That's part of why we do Socialism Saturday. That's why you hear me repeat the same thing over and over and over and over and over again every day of my life, because I'm teaching you how to explain it as easily as possible. And then everyone, absolutely everyone, and I don't want any fucking excuses, everyone needs to go out and start teaching as many people as they can, starting with your friends and starting with your family, what is going on. Those are our goals. We are never going to deprogram them. We can educate as many non-socialists as possible, though. Thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it. I'm calling it now. Frank McCormick, Carlin is teaching her cult members that James Lindsay believes the piano is a sex cult. She's dangerous. I must protect you. Yeah, probably true, Dragon Balls. Probably true. Thank you for the super chat.
Reality is, the oppression is the saw. The capitalists cannot actually exert their rule over the vast majority of us if we are all united in understanding our collective power and our interest against them. Us being the working class, the vast majority of human beings, not just in the country, but even in the world, understanding that we have a lot more in common with one another than the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, and that those capitalists have all these systems in place to try and maintain their power. Questions on tax policy would be a lot easier to discuss if everyone in the United States who had under a certain level of income fully understood that their interests were aligned against, those who are actually setting the laws and those who have all of the wealth. But people are divided by different forms of their position in various oppressive hierarchies. They might think themselves to be more aligned with the capitalist class in X, Y, or Z way because of their place on, say, a racial hierarchy scale. They might side along with their oppressor in the form of, oppressing like anti-trans legislation in bathrooms, or perspectives on abortion and trying to limit people's bodily autonomy. They might completely be complicit with those things because of their view of themselves at the top of a hierarchy from a different oppression. However, if we are to, kind of confront and combat this ideology, we have to understand and utilize our key unity in the working class under that class hierarchy, that class pyramid, that massive base, which contains among it people of all sorts of different sexualities, all sorts of different races, genders, religious, denominations. The vast swath of human beings on this planet have way more in common with one another on this basis of class. And it doesn't, at the end of the day, whether you are a man or a woman will absolutely impact how you go, how you are affected by various laws in society, how other people have perspectives of you, etc. But when it comes to the exploitation under capitalism, what's most important is that you are capable of doing the job required of you, and that you are willing to do that job and allow some of the wealth that you create be passed on to the person who is your boss, who is at the top of the pyramid. And all of the rest of that stuff is interchangeable. And so we see hierarchies rise and fall based on how effective they are able to serve the interest of the crucial fundamental class hierarchy in our society and economy. We have seen changes in, how laws against homosexuality, is a perfect example, have come and gone, have changed in form and structure, are different in different localities. But the fundamental structure of class hierarchy has been unchanged. The interests and goals of expropriating wealth from the working class and moving it up to the ruling class will not change. That is the fundamental question. And it's kind of, I think, a little deceptive of the kind of liberal perspective of it being just one of many different types of hierarchies, is that it's like trying to lead you into the belief that, well, if you can change people's perspectives on, what they think of working people, that would somehow change the narrative, that there's some way to legislate away the exploitation of the working class, just as we, can legislate away certain discrimination based on gender or, and things like voting and that kind of thing. So the reality is all of these other things are kind of, there are certain hierarchies that are very fiercely defended. Racial hierarchy in the United States is very fiercely defended, and it would be, but it would be a lot to actually try.
What's another word for racial hierarchy? Pop quiz for the chat. What is it? He just said racial hierarchy in the United States is fiercely defended. What is another word for racial hierarchy? Well, it would actually be two words. What is it? What is a term that means racial hierarchy? Ding! Systemic racism, correct. I would have also accepted institutional racism. Systemic racism. Systemic racism, systemic racism. The reason it's systemic racism, which is a reference to capitalism, but systemic racism is what I was looking for. Systemic racism is what they refer to as the racial hierarchy because it's systemic racism that perpetuates the wealth inequality between white people who were the private property owners and black people who were the owned private property. White people the oppressors, black people the oppressed. It's systemic racism or institutional racism that perpetuate that hierarchy, okay? What that means is it's not about skin color. It is about the system that upholds racism, the institution that upholds racism. The institution that upholds racism. The system that upholds racism is capitalism. The institution that upholds racism is capitalism. Anytime you hear them talking about racism, you have to really listen and pay attention. Are they talking about racism on the individual level? Or are they talking about racism on the system level, the institutional level? If they're talking about racism on the individual level, that might be about skin color. They're saying Johnny Jones hates black people and therefore Johnny Jones is a white supremacist. That could be about skin color because they're saying that Johnny Jones just hates his neighbor, I don't know, like his black neighbor. I'm not going to come up with a name because I'll get called a racist if I do. They're going to say that Johnny Jones hates Shaniqua because Shaniqua is black, okay? That's an example of individual racism. The vast majority of times that the left is talking about white supremacy, whiteness, racism, they're not talking about the individual level. They are talking about the system level, okay? The system means capitalism. The institution means capitalism. They're not talking about a dispute between two people. They're talking about all white people believe this. White in this case doesn't mean skin color. It means access to resources. It means capitalist privilege. White privilege means capitalist privilege. No. No. I literally just, no. I literally just explained this. It almost, unless you are talking about individual, unless you are talking about an individual, it does not mean skin color. The only time they are talking about skin color is when they are referring to a specific individual. If they are talking about the system, then white supremacy means systemic racism. Whiteness means systemic racism. And that is not about skin color. It is about capitalism. This is not, bro, you're not listening. Black married couple have the same poverty rate as white couples. No systemic racism. No. This doesn't matter. First of all, you're not in the United States. In the United States, by the way, that's not true. You're talking about the UK. We are talking about the United States. Okay? Secondly, it doesn't fucking matter because slavery meant that black couples could not pass generational wealth to their descendants, whereas white couples did have the ability to pass generational wealth to their descendants. I mean, thank you for paying me money, but you are actively fighting your ability to learn this right now because you are not fucking listening. And I'm trying to do you a service by telling you that. You know what? Actually, no, never mind. Keep paying me money to not listen to what I'm saying and to keep going on being ignorant in the world and to watch your country descend into a fucking hellscape because you don't understand why it's happening. You know what? I don't give a flying fuck if the UK falls. I'm gonna be very honest. I don't give a flying fuck. I'm an American. So if you want to come into my chat and you want to not listen to what's being taught because you want to be stubborn about it, and you want to keep paying me money to be stubborn about it, then your country will fall and you're the one who's going to suffer and your kids are going to suffer and your grandkids are going to suffer. And it's not going to be my fault because I tried to tell you what was going on and you didn't want to fucking listen. But you know what? Keep paying me money. I don't really care. Won't be the United States. It'll be the UK.
Try and really change that on a mass scale. But we've seen it change. And the reason why it's being perpetuated is because it is so useful a tool in maintaining that fundamental hierarchy, which is class, in maintaining the complicity of the working class.
They just said that racism is fundamental in maintaining the hierarchy of class. The presentation that was given 3 years ago just disproved the dissident right-wingers in the chat.
In the broader structure of capitalism. Okay. I also again wanted to talk about the actual development of capitalism in the United States is particularly close with some of the most brutal forms of oppression in the world. And that is because, you know, the US has expanded and become the dominant economy in the world and has therefore kind of exported all of its particular oppressions onto other cultures and other societies. And this is just the same as, you know, British hierarchies and oppressions expanding as their, you know, colonial rule covered, you know, whatever it was, like 1/3 of the world, or, you know, every single continent, had its own views on things like gender, things like sexuality, had its own structures. I'm not trying to say that, you know, everything was more equitable. There were other forms of hierarchy towards religion, for instance, that as, say, US hegemony changes and grows, some places may change their perspective on religious hierarchies, may not perceive that degree of, you know, enforcement, I suppose, legally or otherwise, as essential. Other places, it might be the opposite. But nonetheless, all these places are shaped by the...
Pop quiz for the chat. What does white privilege mean? What does white privilege mean? We're getting a lot of dissident right-wingers in here tonight that like to argue with us because dissident right-wingers can't wrap their heads around the idea that these people don't hate white people. What does white privilege mean? It means capitalist privilege. It means beneficiary of capitalism. White privilege means beneficiary of capitalism. Capitalist privilege, or as benefiting from capitalism. That means private property ownership. Having more property and resources is a beneficiary of capitalism. The power of having the ownership of private property. White privilege means beneficiary of capitalism. Whiteness is capitalism built on the backs of slaves. We are all beneficiaries of that system today. That's what that means. Has nothing to do with skin color. That's why Larry Elder is considered to be the black face of white supremacy. That's why Jay-Z is considered to be a white supremacist. That's why Kanye West is considered to be a white supremacist. That's why NPR and Washington Post published articles about multiracial whiteness. That's why Cheryl Harris, in her 20th anniversary speech celebrating her paper, Whiteness as Property, said explicitly that black people could be white too. That it had nothing to do with skin color. That it was about private property and capitalism. White privilege means beneficiary of capitalism.
US and its particular oppressions. We'll talk more about that, I guess, as we get to imperialism, or I suppose as we already, you know, talked about imperialism. But in the US, particularly the genocide of the indigenous population for land that is continued, and and recently in Canada as well. There's a lot of information on this of burial sites that have been drug up from residency schools that were also a common practice in the U.S. To try and separate people and their communities and their tribes from the land that they lived on for many generations, so that the U.S. and its particular interest of capitalist
Welcome back,
expansion could then
Akshay.
seize that land. The
Okay, they just said the capitalist expansion of the U.S. Okay, so the map he's got here is basically showing this is all the indigenous land in the United States. This is how the indigenous land was organized prior to the United States expanding in the capitalist expansion and taking over the indigenous land. Well, and I'm trying to tell you that you are wrong, bro. We are trying to teach you all the things you don't fucking know. You are not on our side right now because you don't know what you don't know. We are trying to teach you and you are digging in your heels and arguing with us. To your credit, you are paying me money to argue with us, so I don't mind so much. But we are trying to teach you and you are not listening, and so now we're going to slap you right in the fucking face until you wake up and until you start listening, because what I've learned over the past 3 years is this is what is required to get people like you to listen. You had half the chat trying to explain to you how you were wrong. It wasn't just coming from me, bro. You're not listening. When you want to start listening and you want to start engaging with the content, that is when you are going to learn. But until that time, you are not on our side. You are not on our side until you start listening. And it's not just listening to me. It's listening to the people on the screen. It's listening to the people in the chat who've been watching this a hell of a lot longer than you have. We are doing this for free on a Saturday night to teach you. And every time you argue with us, you are spitting in our faces. So start listening. So, what we see on the map here is a map of like the indigenous land in the United States. Now, when what socialists believe is that indigenous people did not own the land. Indigenous people did not own the land. They lived on the land, they were caretakers of the land, but they did not own the land as private property. They then believe that the evil capitalist oppressors who founded the United States came in and stole the land from the indigenous people and privatized it under the oppressive force of capitalism. That's called colonization or colonialism, okay? Imperialism is like the higher form of that. That's when you take over entire countries. That's why they say the United States is imperial, because the United States effectively controls a lot of countries. Or like the United Kingdom is imperial because the United States used to have like an empire sort of thing. But in most cases, this is about colonization or colonialism, because they privatized it under the oppressive force of How many times am I going to have to say to the dissident right-wingers, you guys need to fucking listen? Let me speak real slowly, bro. Prior to the capitalist expansion, the land was not privatized. The land was owned by the collective. The capitalist expansion of the United States took the land from collective ownership and privatized it under the oppressive force of capitalism, because capitalism is defined as private property ownership. That is what colonialism or colonization means. Is anyone confused? the evil capitalist empire that is the United States, and they do believe that the United States was founded on capitalism, privatized the land. They set up borders around that land. They kicked the indigenous people off that land. They said, this is our land now and you couldn't use it. Prior to that, anyone could use the land because it was under the ownership of the collective. It wasn't even under ownership. They actually take great care to say it wasn't under the ownership. It was under the caretakership of the collective. And our retarded friend still isn't getting it. So now you're going to get put on the spot, bro. This is a question for you and only for you. I don't want anyone else answering this question. Do you understand the difference between land that is under the collective care of the indigenous people or land that is privatized? What is the confusion? We're going to wait for you. You're holding up our entire stream because you're fucking arguing. Do you understand the difference between land that is under the collective care and land that is... Okay, here we go. Here we go. Symptoms of narcissism, believing they are superior to others. Oh my god, he just got blocked, guys. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Retards get blocked in my chat. Oh my god. Yep, that was a James Lindsay retard. That was a James Lindsay retard. Yes, they also do use custodians of the land. It is uncanny. It is uncanny how stupid James Lindsay's audience is every fucking time. All right, let's keep going.
Communities and their tribes from the land that they lived on for many generations, so that the U.S. and its particular interest of capitalist expansion could then seize that land. The enslavement of African people, fundamental to the expansion and development of capitalism, particularly in early U.S. history. Of course, the slave economy was crucial to supplying the raw agricultural materials that were used in the North in the development of the manufacturing there. And this hyper-exploitation of immigrant labor, whether from Asia or from Latin America. Initially, it was the hyper-exploitation of immigrant labor from, Ireland and Italy, but just and Russia and Poland, like other places where outside of basically the UK. Well, I guess technically Ireland was part of the UK, but
yeah. So Rottweiler says, Dr. K, would it be fair to say and they believe indigenous societies were socialist paradises before the colonial privatization of the land? Yep, that would be fair to say. They idealize indigenous societies.
But basically outside of that dominant culture. And this hyper exploitation is a little different than just typical exploitation because, there were laws against particular, whether Chinese immigrants, Latin American immigrants, of course, are being discriminated now, but it allows them to essentially just make another division between standard workers and, immigrant workers, standard labor and immigrant labor. Or you could say domestic labor and immigrant labor. It's all domestic because it's all inside the US, but they're basically just using these particular oppressions to divide the working class further. So I think, from our perspective in the United States, it is so much more important that we critically examine, dismantle, and ultimately try to, unite across these divisions on, the basis between what is the, a settler citizen and indigenous citizen of the United States, or, the Black population and everyone else in the United States, the immigrant population and, a natural born citizen or whatever. All of these different divisions are the fundamental divisions that are keeping everything else propped up, have been from its inception. Okay. And then lastly, I wanted to just go through a historical example of this through the Rainbow Coalition.
See, I just want to say, too, I mean, it's like we've got James Lindsay's fanboys coming into our chat tonight and trying to cause problems, but I've tried to answer every single question. I literally, literally any single person can come into my chat and ask questions. Now, they might be stupid questions, but I'll answer stupid questions. Where I start to get bitchy is when I don't believe people are asking questions in good faith, which is obviously what was going on with that James Lindsay supporter just then, is they weren't asking the question in good faith. But I still answered the question. I didn't delete the question. I didn't ban the question. I deleted him when he started getting insulting. The Rainbow Coalition was a coalition between basically like the Black Panthers and the KKK, or like white identitarians, where they all decided that they were all oppressed under capitalism or something, and so they all kind of started working together. And then the government assassinated the guy who was running it. He's going to talk about it.
Which was a goal for the Black Panther Party to expand with so many other different groups. I wish I had all the list of them in front of me, but different groups that were based on different perspectives, basically recognizing their shared common interest among class, fundamentally, against those at the very top of this hierarchy in the United States, the top of the exploitation pyramid, reaching out to one another, recognizing the particular ways that they are being, whether it's targeted by police or, really police was a crucial organizing principle, but other forms of discrimination in the justice system as a whole, whether it's labor rights and being excluded even from certain,
Fred Hampton,
privileges
that was the name of the guy.
like unionized labor, all of these different forms of what is fundamentally propping up class exploitation. By reaching across with one another and uniting across the working class, even though they didn't have as much support from organized labor and from the broadest swaths of the working class, just recognizing amongst those who are targeted by police violence, reaching across despite the differences of their identity, of their religion, etc., coming together, they were able to accomplish a great deal. And we see today the issue of police violence is still, has arisen once more on the kind of top of the list of the ways in which the ruling class oppresses, many different forms of the working class. But nonetheless, it is our solidarity against that allowed many of the different laws that did pass in that time and have allowed the whatever degree of freedom and just I guess you would just say stability among different individuals, usually not within just the working class, because as you're aligning with others on these instances of identity, working towards this goal, basically are able to overturn those particular, again, all of those other hierarchies are dependent on conditions. You may overturn specific laws that are specific policies, redlining, etc., that might be targeting Asian American populations and Black American populations, but nonetheless the fundamental concern, which is the control of land by developing companies and the ruling class, has been untouched, unfortunately. So if we want to fight against oppression of any form, our principal goal is going to be uniting.
Hang on, I got a super chat. Thanks, Dragon Balls. For the record, we infiltrated Deb and asked valuable questions. They infiltrate and name call. We interact in good faith. They censor except when Deb fucks up. Yeah, the other thing I was thinking too, at the very beginning of this stream, I said, you are in a class. I am the teacher in the class. You are the student in the class. Imagine a reality in which you walk into a classroom on a class that you're signing up for. You have signed up for this class. You walk into the classroom. You have a teacher in the front of the classroom. You are a student in the classroom. The teacher starts teaching things. You ask questions. The teacher gives you answers, but you don't like the answers. So you start arguing with the teacher. And then when the teacher says, I am the teacher of the class, you are the student in the class, This is the answer to the question that you keep asking me over and over and over again. I've answered you. I'm no longer going to answer you when you keep asking the same question. And then the student in the class goes, "You're a narcissist!" That's what just happened. That's literally just what happened. The student in the class called me, the teacher, the narcissist because the student in the class was getting an answer to a question that he didn't like. Can you imagine if that ever happened in a college class? Where a student gets up and declares the professor in the class to be a narcissist because they're getting an answer they don't like? That is the internet in one giant bow. Anyway. Thanks, Dragon
With
Ball.
other members of the working class, regardless of their identities, on our shared and common interests. And solidarity in particular, it's not just fighting for someone else, it's fighting for your own interests and recognizing your interests in the demands of others as well. Recognizing that by fighting for yourself, you're also fighting for others. And because there are common enemies, again, going back, understanding that there are many different hierarchies, but the class hierarchy is the fundamental one. Because there are many common enemies at the top of that, we have a shared interest in fighting for our own liberation and the liberation of others by uniting together to, essentially overthrow that particular rule of the ruling class. So that is our very basic overview of oppression, of the different forms of hierarchies, where they come from fundamentally, and how we kind of perceive of a movement to challenge them. But I'm hoping that through the discussion, people can come up with more particular examples because, as I said, there are so many different forms this takes and historically has changed as well. Thank you.
All right. Hey, we made it through the first class. That's 1 down, 3 more to go. We are doing Socialist Summer School tonight, guys. We have 4 classes to watch from the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. Yo! 2 ladies with the benefit of the generous membership donation. Thank you, 2 ladies. Let's see who got a membership. Kyle got a membership. Mojave got a membership. Rocky did. The Mad Hatter did. Kiki did. Brooks did. Mass Genocide. Andrew. Conspiracy Extremist. Leonardo. Congratulations to everyone who got a membership. Thank you, 2 ladies, for being so generous. We appreciate you. We love you. Say hello to those 2 beautiful girls. We appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who has donated to the Super Chat Carlin Vacation Fund. So far, there will be, actually, I've just been alerted that there will be an official announcement about the vacation tonight. Yes, my vacation gets an official announcement, and that official announcement will be taking place in a Twitter space called Goon Squad at around 11 p.m. tonight Eastern Time. I will be in that space, and so if you want to come and learn about my my vacation adventure, you can come and listen to Goon Squad tonight with Siggy. And we will be talking about the vacation adventure. Anyway, for right now, we are continuing with our Socialist Summer School. We are watching the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. We have 4 sessions from them. These recordings were about 3 years ago. This one is going to be on internationalism and revolution. And that's all the information we have. Let's see what's up. Oh, and as a reminder for new people, I always so if you're new to Socialism Saturday, let us know you're new in the chat. If you have questions at any point, please feel free to ask questions. Don't be intimidated by the fact that I sometimes yell at people. I don't yell at people who are asking questions in good faith. I yell at people who are being disruptive. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask.
All right. So my name's Scout. My pronouns are they, them. I am with the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. And we are an educational and action group that stands in the Marxist tradition of Lenin, Luxemburg, and Trotsky. We're based on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish and the Duwamish peoples. And we are for international revolution that will give power to the working class throughout the world. And in order to achieve this, we support all struggles against oppression and exploitation here and around the world. we aim at an international socialist society, which is organized around from each according to their
Welcome,
ability
Robert.
to each according to their needs. And the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. Tonight's topic is revolution and internationalism. We have essentially 3 readings, 3 articles to go along with that about Chile, the state and revolution, and then a 2-part article about Marxism and nationalism.
Pop quiz. Why do socialists in the United States talk about internationalism? Why is that important to them? Do you think? Why are the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists talking about internationalism? Because they think the whole world has to be socialist for it to work. Yup. Capitalism is an international system. Yup. They don't believe in borders. I wasn't thinking about that, Suzanne, but you're right about that. True. Their goal is a global socialist revolution for the world. Exactly. Intifada is not anti-Semitic. Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution. They don't believe in borders. Global intifada because socialists are globalists. Yup. No, you are not free until everyone is free. Once the US falls to communism, the world will fall. To be successful, Marxism has to be worldwide. Socialism has to be everywhere. They want global communism, intifada, worldwide socialist revolution. They don't believe in borders. The United States is a big obstacle. True, 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 true. Communism is international. Worldwide socialism, US capitalism needs to fall to be successful. Exactly. Exactly. So what socialists believe is that it's not enough for the United States to be socialist, because if all the countries around the United States aren't socialist, that's going to inhibit the ability of the United States to be socialist. This is why socialism hasn't worked in Cuba, hasn't worked in Venezuela, didn't work in Russia. China is even socialist. China's capitalist. So they believe that for real socialism to work, it has to be a global endeavor. Now, they are not the same as the WEF, okay? The WEF are also globalists, but radical revolutionary socialists do not like the WEF. They don't like each other. They're going to fight at some point. They both want a global world order, but they don't agree on who should be running it. So they're going to fight. Are socialists trying to defeat an aspect of human intimacy? I don't know what you mean by human intimacy. Can you and you don't have to send in a super chat for this. Can you clarify in the chat what you mean when you say human intimacy, please? That would be very helpful to me. Yeah, the question is very unclear. Oh, wait, is James tweeting about us? Of course James is tweeting about us. Socialism fucking Saturday. Why wouldn't James be tweeting about us on Socialism Saturday? Oh, he's tweeting about the woke. Right, okay, never mind. So we're waiting for a clarification. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say the nuclear family is a form of human intimacy, if I'm honest about it. Like, when I think about human intimacy, I mean about sex. Well, okay, Jadam, if you want to clarify what you mean by that, I will be paying attention to the chat, but no, we need him to clarify it, or Jardum, sorry. We're still waiting for him to clarify. Because honestly, my answer to this question, based on how it's phrased, is no, I don't think they are trying to defeat an aspect of human intimacy. I don't think that they are. But I don't understand what you mean by this, so you need to give me more information. Thank you.
And Steve is going to kick us off, and I believe we're talking about revolution first, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, what we figured what we do is divide it up and do the presentation on revolution, then a discussion on that, and then a discussion on presentation on nationalism, and then a discussion on that. So as far as revolution, The socialist movement has been divided. Okay, the socialist movement has been divided between reformists and revolutionaries for a very long time. We are
Pop quiz for the chat. What is the difference between reformist and revolutionary? What is the difference between reformist and revolutionary? He just said the socialist movement has been divided between reformist and revolutionary for a very long time. What is the difference between reformist and revolutionary? Yup, DSA are reformers, communists are revolutionary. Exactly. Reformism capitulates to capitalism. Reformism believes that the system as it currently is can be reformed. Reformers are still capitalists, exactly. Revolutionaries want to smash the capitalist government. Reformers want to use the electoral process for change. Exactly. I'm not looking for clarification from you, Maria. I'm looking for clarification from the person who asked the question. Reformists think they can change the system. Reformists change the current system. Revolutionaries replace the current system. Reformists think they can work within the system. Revolutionaries want to destroy the system. Exactly. You guys got it. You guys got it. Well, it's not just a slow change, Akshay. It's change using the electoral process.
in the revolutionary socialist tradition. We feel that the state itself is an obstacle to socialist transformation, and it needs to be smashed and replaced with a worker state. The reason for this is the state is not neutral. The state has been shaped, in this country, for example, for literally hundreds of years by the growth of capitalism. The state is controlled in capitalist interests in several ways. Through bribes, campaign contributions, personnel, that is ruling class people running the state, lobbyists, etc. But the primary way that the state is oriented towards capitalism is because of the structure of it, which is shaped by capitalism, and because of the competitive world economy. In order for that state to have power and influence, it has to be based on a successful capitalist economy, because we live in a world capitalist system. Therefore, a profitable economy at the expense of workers.
We live in a world capitalist system. I think someone literally answered that in the pop quiz earlier.
Because, as we know, profits are really the unpaid labor of workers, the surplus value that workers create. And we need to remember that the government is not exactly the same as the state. That is, the cabinet and so forth. Even a radical government, suddenly imagine that the cabinet suddenly was hypnotized into socialism, they would still have to confront the capitalist state, the state apparatus of the police, army, court systems, what Marx called the special bodies of armed men. And we'll get into this, a good example of this is Chile, get into that in a little while. In the US, there's one particular structure that's oriented towards capitalism as a barrier against any real radical transformation.
Hang on. Pop quiz for the chat. Is AOC a reformist? I know the far left doesn't like her, though, as she's sold out to the Democratic Party. What do people think? Is AOC a reformist? I think AOC would be a reformist because she works within the system. Yes. AOC is considered to be a reformist. AOC is also considered to be a traitor. By the way, AOC gets denounced by the real far left all the time. All the time. AOC is a grifter pandering to progressives. Exactly. Yeah. AOC is not a real socialist, guys. AOC is considered to be a traitor by real socialists because she capitulated to the establishment, essentially.
And that is the U.S. Supreme Court. It has the right to invalidate any law. Hang
on. He just talked about why socialists hate the Supreme Court. Hang on. This is important. Okay. When revolutionary socialists overthrow the government, they want to abolish the Constitution. They want to abolish the Electoral College. They want to abolish all court systems, especially the Supreme Court. They hate the Supreme Court most of all. They want to abolish the Senate. They want to abolish the White House and raise the red flag of communism above it. The only kind of system that they might be kind of okay with in some form is like a House of Representatives style thing, but it will not look like what you currently think of the House of Representatives. It will be completely different, but that's kind of what they're going for, and that would be their entire governing body, would be like the House of Representatives, effectively. Not in the way you currently understand it, but that's the thing that they're kind of like circling around. So let's hear them say it. And they call all those other things that they want to abolish capitalist systems.
Same as the state, that is the cabinet and so forth. Even a radical government, suddenly imagine that the cabinet suddenly was hypnotized into socialism, they would still have to confront the capitalist state, the state apparatus of the police, army, court systems, what Marx called the special bodies of armed men. And we'll get into this, a good example of this is Chile, get into that in a little while. In the US, there's one particular structure that's oriented towards capitalism as a barrier against any real radical transformation, and that is the US Supreme Court. It has the right to invalidate any law. So if Congress suddenly went crazy.
So the Supreme Court is oriented towards a capitalist system. The Supreme Court upholds the capitalist system because the Supreme Court can invalidate any law that the people decide to pass. And so if the people decide on a law, the Supreme Court can unilaterally exist to say, no, you can't have that. And via that, they believe it upholds the capitalist system. Again?
To this, a good example of this is Chile. Get into that in a little while. In the US, there's one particular structure that's oriented towards capitalism as a barrier against any real radical transformation, and that is the US Supreme Court. It has the right to invalidate any law. So if Congress suddenly went crazy and passed a bunch of socialist laws, the Supreme Court could just say, nope, unconstitutional, that's it. This is not the same in every country, but in the United States, there are uniquely anti-democratic features to the way our Constitution is set up.
Anti-democratic means anti-socialist. Anytime they use the word democratic, they mean socialist.
For one thing, we have a Senate which represents a Senate which represents territory and not people. We have an electoral college which reflects.
The Senate represents territory because you get 2 senators for every state. So the Senate is literally the representative of private property. Does everyone understand that? They want to get rid of the Senate because they don't believe the Senate represents people. The Senate represents private property.
Which represent the United States, there are uniquely anti-democratic features to the way our Constitution is set up. For one thing, we have a Senate which represents a Senate which represents territory and not people. We have an electoral college which reflects the same type of thing, whereby the president is elected by an electoral college which is unrepresentative and not by the people. There are no votes for felons, prisoners, and most immigrants in the United States. Even at the local level, courts can override legislatures. This is why, for example, Washington State has no income tax, although it's passed a few times. Now, the state is an irremediably capitalist body. It's pro-capitalist, but that doesn't mean it can't give in some reforms with pressure. So if it's economic interest, the interests of the capitalist class are attacked through strikes and other economic disruption. If it's political legitimacy under attack, then it can give reform. So we see this with the civil rights movement. We saw this with the.
Yeah, cause here's the thing. Listen, there are arguments to be made against capitalism. There just are. Crony capitalism and corrupt capitalism are a thing. There are people right now who are making arguments about why we should maybe, you know, sometimes go around the Constitution. And you know what? It's not as though they don't have points that are worth considering at like a high level, I think, because I think all ideas are kind of like worth considering sometimes, especially when you have problems like we do. But there are also basic realities in that, like, right now we might not think the Constitution is perfect, but it is the thing that's preventing the socialists from winning. We might not think that capitalism is perfect. We might have, you know, objections to certain aspects of capitalism, and those concerns could be really valid. However, capitalism is what is standing between us and them winning. And it's the thing of it is like, we have to have some self-awareness about the position that we find ourselves in, because they're kicking our ass on every single level. And so it's like, you might not like capitalism. You might think that the Constitution would be better if it had additions or subtractions. You might think that the United States would be better under a completely different form of government, like a monarchy. You might think all those things, and you might have very good reasons for thinking those things. However, there are certain battles that right now we have to pick up and put over on the side. Because if we start to fight any of those battles right now, these people are going to win. And they're going to win because they're so much further ahead of us, it's not even funny. They have a almost 100-year head start. And so it's like, are those other battles unimportant? Well, no, they're not unimportant, right? But sometimes you have to be strategic, and you have to look at the pieces on the chessboard, and you have to say, I don't have the pieces to fight every battle right now. I have the pieces to fight this battle, and the rest of these things are just going to have to wait.
Movements of the 1930s, which won unemployment compensation, welfare, the right to strike, et cetera, et cetera. So radical mass movements are what bring about the fundamental reforms in society. And so this underlies our attitude towards the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is a capitalist party. It's funded by the capitalists, run by the capitalists, et cetera.
Are you telling me that socialists don't support the Democratic Party because they believe the Democratic Party is too close to capitalism? Are you telling me that Kamala Harris isn't really a communist or a socialist because she is a Democrat? I know we're all shocked by this shocking revelation that the Democratic Party is not the same as communists.
Radical mass movements are what bring about the fundamental reforms in society. And so this underlies our attitude towards the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is a capitalist party. It's funded by the capitalists, run by the capitalists, et cetera. It is committed to the capitalist system and to imperialism. And it also co-ops movements. The key question we ask about candidates and parties is, do they help or hurt the development of mass movements, which can threaten the system and therefore bring about reforms? Because that is what really brings about reforms, is the mass movements. The Democrats actually hurt mass movements. So our approach is that we need independent, militant movements, and this flows from our revolutionary understanding of where the system is.
Shocking.
Now, Chile is a great example.
Shocking, I say.
A so-called socialist government was elected in 1970. However, the state apparatus, the courts, the police, the army, et cetera, remained intact. In fact, in order to be allowed to be...
Exactly. The revolutionary socialists need nice, peaceful militants to overthrow the system. Exactly, Wolfgang.
Elected as president, Salvador Allende had to sign what was known as the Statute of Guarantees, which meant that he would not attack any of these features of the state, the army, the courts, etc. And he proved that no elected government can legally overcome the state apparatus. His government nationalized only the industries in Chile that the Chilean bourgeoisie, the capitalist class, wanted to have nationalized, like copper. The workers' movement was too strong at first to be just to be crushed by the military, even though the United States government actually urged the Chilean military to hold a coup before Allende could even take office. But the military said, no, we're not in a strong enough position yet. So over the course of time, their allegiance to reformism led to the working class movement weakening. And so by September 1973, September 11, 1973, the military felt strong enough to have a coup and overthrew the government. So the solution for us is that we need to build a revolutionary organization in advance that can become strong enough so that when a revolutionary crisis breaks out, it can lead the working class to actually take power and smash the old state and create a worker state. We can't just snap our fingers and create a revolution. That only comes from a deep crisis in society. But when that deep crisis hits, revolutionaries need to become organized in order to be able to take power. So that's basically the view of revolutionary socialists, that the state itself needs to be smashed, needs to be replaced by a worker state. And short of that, we can fight for reforms, but we cannot bring about socialism through the reformist method of modifying the capitalist state. Instead, the capitalist state must be seen as an enemy to be overthrown and eliminated.
Is this like the third time we've gotten revolutionary socialists on video talking about overthrowing the capitalist U.S. government? When are people going to start listening to me? Can I clip this? Hang on. Let me see if my clippy clip tool is working. If not, I've marked the clip. My clip tool wasn't working the other day, so we'll see if it is now. Yeah, it's working. Okay, here we go. Clippy clip time.
Revolutionaries need to become organized in order to be able to take power. So that's basically the view of revolutionary socialists, that the state itself needs to be smashed, needs to be replaced by a worker state. And short of that, we can fight for reforms, but we cannot bring about socialism through the reformist method of modifying the capitalist state. Instead, the capitalist state must be seen as an enemy to be overthrown and eliminated. So I will leave it at that. Open for discussions.
There we go. Got my clip. Got my clippy clip. Got my clippy clip clip. Well, I mean, this was from 3 years ago, Sam. So no, I think they've always been militant about overthrowing the state. I think that we're just finding them saying it.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. We'll pause our recording.
So
right.
Marxists are internationalists. We don't believe that socialism can exist in one country or a small group of countries. We believe it has to happen on an international scale. Even a worker state, where workers initially overthrow the capitalist state and create their own worker state, will have to spread pretty quickly, because otherwise it will be under intolerable capitalist threat, either both economically, probably militarily, and so forth. We saw that with the Russian Revolution. But the question is, how do we build internationalism? Well, in the United States, it's relatively easy to describe, if not easy to carry out. And that is, we oppose borders. We are against immigration controls. We are for full equal rights for all people who live in the US, no matter what their official nationality is, where they were born, where they came from, citizenship status, and so forth. So we reject the idea that immigrants in the United States should not have the right to vote. This was something that Trump made a big deal about in 2016. He said, well, I would have won by a bigger margin, but all these illegal immigrants got to vote. And that was not true, but it should have been true. That is, people who live in this country and participate in its activities, or in the economy, et cetera, they should have democratic control. They should have the right to vote.
All right, we're going to go back and get a clip of that. Joe, you really should know the answer to this, girl. You really, really should. Are revolutionary socialists for gun bans and gun control? No. We have literally never heard them talk about that. We've never heard them talk about that. The only people who talk about that are Democrats, not socialists. Democrats. Let's go back. That was a great clip. All right, hang on. You want to know why there's so much immigration coming in over the border? Here's why.
Economically, probably militarily, and so forth. We saw that with the Russian Revolution. But the question is, how do we build internationalism? Well, in the United States, it's relatively easy to describe, if not easy to carry out. And that is, we oppose borders. We are against immigration controls. We are for full equal rights for all people who live in the US, no matter what their official nationality is, where they were born, where they came from, citizenship status, and so forth. So we reject the idea that immigrants in the United States should not have the right to vote. This was something that Trump made a big deal about in 2016. He said, well, I would have won by a bigger margin, but all these illegal immigrants got to vote. And that was not true, but it should have been true. That is, people who live in this country and participate in its activities or in the economy, et cetera, they should have democratic control. They should have the right to vote. So anyway, that's just one example. We're in favor of full equal rights for everyone in the United States. So that means we support the immigrant rights movement and so forth. Also, we oppose US imperialism or any other forms of imperialism. We do not believe that the United States government, which is a state that is based on imperialism, can be a benevolent actor in the world. So we're not in favor of US interventions militarily, economically, diplomatically.
Right,
so in other words, we don't fall in with this idea that diplomacy is a good thing, and we should support diplomatic efforts for the US to achieve its goals rather than military efforts. We're opposed to both. We want to build an international unity across national lines by supporting liberation movements against imperialism. So we support the right of oppressed nations to separate off and form their own government, or what Lenin called the right of nations to self-determination. We don't necessarily call for every oppressed nation to separate off and form its own state, but that's up to the people involved. In the United States, Puerto Rico would be a good example. We support the right of the Puerto Rican people to separate off and form their own state, if that's what they, or their own nation state, if that's what they want to do. But that's up to them to decide whether they want to do that. So Lenin analogized this to the right of divorce. That is, we believe that all women should have the right to divorce their husbands, but we don't necessarily mean that all women should divorce their husbands right now. It's a right that women should have. Therefore, and likewise, it's a right that nations should have. And the reason we defend this right is because a nation who oppresses another cannot itself be free, as Marx put it. As long as workers in the United States support their ruling class intervention around the world, they will never oppose the US internally. It'll blunt the class struggle to the extent that they accept American nationalism. And that American nationalism slops over into
don't mind me, slime avalanche.
Opposition to immigrant rights, opposition to Muslims, for example, who are identified as terrorists and all that kind of stuff.
Half my slime just fell down.
It's important to break working class people away from nationalism
but I protected
in the
cider.
imperialist countries. That's one important part of this. But also to create that international unity, we have to show workers in colonial countries or oppressed countries, oppressed by imperialism, that the workers in the imperialist countries support their rights and are opposed to their own government. So workers in Iraq, for example, are not going to want to be in international alliance with workers in the United States if they think workers in the United States support the US government bombing Iraq. So on both sides, support is necessary to create internationalism, both to break workers in the central power away from nationalism, away from their own ruling class, but also to create the solidarity necessary, create real international solidarity. So defending the right of nations to self-determination is the only way to bring about the basis of unity. Now, this seems paradoxical because Marxists are internationalists, but it's important. We believe that the nationalism of the oppressor is not the same as the nationalism of the oppressed. That is, when people rise up against imperialism, there's a progressive content to what they're doing, and it can move in a progressive direction. In some ways, it's very similar to the white nationalism in the US. White nationalism is nothing but reactionary, racist, supporting the system, divides the working class, etc. Black nationalism, although it's not a solution to the racial question in the United States, can have a progressive content. That is, it can motivate people to fight against racism. So there's a very big difference between the racism of the oppressor and the racism of the oppressed. A good example of this internationally today is the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Palestine's struggle is a national liberation struggle. It's a struggle against colonialism, occupation, and really the imperialism that backs up the Zionists.
What does colonialism and imperialism mean? Pop quiz for the chat. We covered this earlier when the James Lindsay fanboy was asking disingenuous questions. We covered this earlier. What does colonialism and imperialism mean? Gloria, you know the answer to that. I'm not going to answer that. Colonialism and imperialism mean capitalism. Colonialism and imperialism mean capitalism. Privatizing land under the oppressive force of capitalism. He means capitalism. The Palestinians are in a glorious uprising against the evil oppressors of the land. Gloria, they always mean capitalism. Always. Every single time. They mean capitalism. They mean capitalism. Colonialism is the expansion of the private property regime. Now listen again. Listen again and listen to when he says, like, here's what's going on in Palestine. And by the way, this was in 2021. This is not in the last year. This was in 2021. Okay? The Palestinian freedom movement has been a real thing for a long time.
Today is the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Palestine's struggle is a national liberation struggle. It's a struggle against colonialism, occupation, and really the imperialism that backs up the Zionist colonial occupation of Palestine.
And I think it's important people understand that this has been their perspective for a long time. The radical revolutionary far left didn't just invent this perspective that the Palestinians are oppressed by the settler colonists, that means the capitalists, the bourgeois capitalist oppressors. They didn't just invent that after October 7th. This was 3 years ago.
Palestine. So in these kind of conflicts, revolutionary socialists take sides. We support Palestine against Israel. We don't say, condemning violence on both sides or any of that kind of stuff. We support the struggle of the Palestinian people. We look at the real effects of various nationalism. And
it's almost like if people had been listening to revolutionary socialists when they were talking about this on the internet 3 years ago, it's almost like people could have predicted what would happen after October 7th on the far left. It's almost like anyone, Chris Rufo, who tries to shill the narrative that anyone who supports Palestine is supporting BLM. It's almost like all those people are just shilling a political narrative, Chris Rufo, that they're paid to shill because it's politically convenient to the Zionists who fund Chris Rufo and the Manhattan Institute. But it was never real. That wasn't real. The revolutionary far left supports Palestine because the revolutionary far left has always supported Palestine. They will always support Palestine because they believe the Palestinians had their land stolen by the settler colonists that are Israel. And they were saying this years ago.
In terms of how it impacts internationalism, and make a decision on that basis, rather than just standing back abstractly and saying, well, all nationalism is bad. So it's important for Marxists, revolutionary socialists, to take sides in the real world when there's real national conflicts. So I will leave it at that.
Woo! Let me stop the recording.
Oh, that it? Look at that. We already got 2 down.
Thanks.
We already got 2 down. 2 more to go. 2 more to go. By the way, guys, after they stopped the recording, they probably had a discussion. So that wasn't the end of the call. That was just the end of the recording. So we didn't leave things like that. They then went into a discussion, but they don't record the discussion. They only record the presentation. All right, guys, we are moving into session number 3. We've got 2 more sessions to go on our radical revolutionary socialist marathon tonight. We are watching the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. Well, in order, then you need to go infiltrate their calls. They don't record the discussion. You need to go we do infiltrate their calls on occasion. This is going to be about, what is this about? What is this about? The Revolutionary Party. Ooh, okay. Let's see what happened. Land acknowledgement.
All right, take it away, Steve.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Were you going to do a little kickoff, or do you want me to get going?
So anyway, I think everybody knows this is Seattle Revolutionary Socialist Summer School. Tonight we'll be talking about why we need a revolutionary party, and both in the theory of it, and then we can, in the discussion, we can get into how that applies to the current period and what we do today to bring that about. So with that, we'll kick it over to Scout.
Awesome. Yeah, I am just going to really quick do a quick land acknowledgement. I live in what is known as Seattle, Washington, and I would like to acknowledge that for those of us joining from the Seattle area, we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor them with gratitude, the land itself, and the Duwamish tribe. And just a brief note, despite treaties and a history of recognition, the Duwamish tribe has had their federal recognition accepted and reversed twice in the past 170 years by this stupid country. Most recently in 2001, they received acknowledgement, but that was immediately reversed by the Bush administration in 2002. They have appealed
By the way,
this
guys,
decision.
the land acknowledgement, for people who don't know, the land acknowledgement is mourning the stolen land. That's why they all do these land acknowledgement things, because at the end of the day, colonization, colonialism, imperialism is all about stealing the land from indigenous people and privatizing it under the oppressive force of capitalism. The reason they do these land acknowledgements, although they've kind of cut back on them lately, but they kind of seem also to be kind of making a comeback. Like, I've seen them here and there. Like, a land acknowledgement is mourning the theft of the indigenous land. Decolonization means returning the land to the indigenous. That's what this is about.
And are still seeking federal recognition to this day. It's bullshit. And as settlers on this land, one way that we can support the Duwamish tribe is paying real rent if you live on their ancestral lands. So you can visit realrentduwamish.org to find out more and get connected with the tribe as well. But let's dive into the first article, Party and Class, about the need for a revolutionary party. So to kind of get into the article, I want to kind of frame it with what we're kind of working with historically. So the article starts out with the classical theory of like the social democratic view of how to achieve socialism, and the party's role in that. And so for social democrats, the party represents the class, and their view was that through various tactics, the party would play a central role in the development towards socialism. They would essentially increase their organization through electoral avenues to the point of taking over and forming the basis for a new state. And so clearly they believe in a more reformist ideology that focuses on electoralism, believing in the power of parliamentary elections, to bring about the revolution versus like armed insurrection or working class self-emancipation. And they kind of believe that through, again, entering into the state, they could change it from the bourgeoisie monster that it is and make it so revolutionary and for the working class. And this perspective was kind of like the baseline theory on the left, without a lot of challenges, especially prior to like the Russian Revolution, and before that. And so Rosa Luxemburg comes on the scene and has like some caveats that she adds to that. So the article kind of gets into her topics, and she brings up the idea of the conservative party versus the spontaneous masses. And her point was essentially that, like, yes, we still need this party, but the masses will go above and beyond because the party is too conservative, and we need to like basically do both. We do need the party, but we also need this like spontaneous action. And this spontaneous action was supposed to be the check to bounce out this like bureaucratization, like making a party full of bureaucrats, which is already what the political system is. And I think that like a good example of this, that we just talked about last week, was in the Chilean Revolution. President Allende was elected on this like mass of social movements, social changes that were happening. He was elected after numerous peasants were occupying land, working class people were occupying factories. They were doing very insurrection, revolutionary based things to like fundamentally change their society and overthrow capitalism. And President Allende came into power and was so much more conservative and essentially prioritized the preservation of the state and its structures over the demands of the people. So I think that's kind of like a good little example of like where Rosa is coming from, talking about this conservative and bureaucratic trend. But folks disagree with Rosa as well. And so that kind of brings us into Trotsky, who they talk about next in the article. And Trotsky comes onto the scene at the time we're talking like 1904. He's very like, has this revolutionary distrust of centralized organization, which sounds, kind of leaning more on the anarchist side, not wanting any centralization, which is still a split that exists today on the left. We have a lot of good anarchist comrades, and I think that there's a lot that our traditions can create a united front with and support, which we'll get into in the future. I'm kind of foreshadowing, but just some shout out to that kind of fundamental split there. But Trotsky's ideas changed throughout that time. And so his distrust was that like through a party that was constantly centralizing, the power would basically end up with like a dictator. It was his main like criticism at that time. And the criticisms that he kind of threw out, like modern day Marxists and Trots and other folks have kind of disagree with, but Trotsky changed his views during his time, during his life, because people changed their views. And so at the time, he brought an important element of not being too focused on this centralism. Like that is an important check that we still need to have, and not having like full cohesion amongst revolutionaries, we do need to be able to work with people and have solidarity with people who have differences. And part of that we'll get into kind of on the next, I believe on the next one, talking about the fact that class consciousness is not, it's never uniform, is something that Lenin gets into. But switching into Lenin and Gramsci, so Lenin is a Russian revolutionary thinker, and Gramsci was an Italian philosopher, and I believe Marxist as well. And their idea of what the party should be and the role of the party in the revolution was quite different. So this is where kind of the conception of the vanguard party comes up, a party to represent the revolutionary part of the class. And so a quote from the article, the party, this is Lenin, the party is something very different from the mass organizations of the whole class. It is a vanguard organization, membership of which requires a dedication not to be found in most workers. And so the basis for that argument is that the the class consciousness amongst the working class people is not uniform. And that is something that we deal with to this day. The working class is incredibly divided. We don't all hold the same beliefs across the working class, even though we may have similar interests. Our consciousness is not uniform. And so until we have a more uniform working class, you know, what do we do? What's the role of the party? And so that's kind of what Lenin and Gramsci get into. So I have this quote on the screen from Gramsci. Parties exist in order to act in this situation, to propagate a particular worldview and the practical activity corresponding to it. They attempt to unite together into a collectivity all those who share a particular worldview and to spread this. And so like the kind of takeaways from these two thinkers is the role of the party is to raise the consciousness of the working class. And that is both within the party and without the party. It's, you know, cadre education within the party so that the newest members rise to the same level of understanding as the oldest members. But it's also bringing more workers into the party who currently, you know, their interests do not align with maybe, like revolutionary ideals, but we're working there. We're all working there. And so talking about propaganda, sharing information, education, and organizing and connecting with like wider and broader groups. In the article, the quote was, involving its work in ever wider circles of workers, which I like that. It's kind of like imagining little unions all working together. And so from there, the kind of Bolshevik, which the Bolshevik party came out of the Leninist thought, the Bolshevik conception of the party versus this more social democratic or what came to be Stalinist conception of the party. And both of those kind of extremes were that the party was becoming the state. And the Bolshevik conception of the party is different. It's not that the party is going to become the state, it's that the party is going to be working to raise the class consciousness and create the conditions for a new state. And so the party will not become the state because, as the article explained, the state has to represent all the diverse interests of all the sections of the workers, but the party is built around that which unites the class. So the party is this revolutionary part, and the state is going to have to represent all the workers. And I really liked this quote. I think it was towards the end of the first article, but it kind of helps me conceptualize the role of the party better. Existing under capitalism, the revolutionary organization will of necessity have a quite different structure to that of the workers' state that will arise in the process of overthrowing capitalism. and I think that's where that like difference between the Stalinist and the social democratic view becomes very.
Guys, just to be really clear, I mean, this is all kind of like basic introduction to like what they actually believe about the development of socialism and communism and stuff like that. I'm not saying anything because I've heard all this before a million times, but if people have questions about any of this, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. I am paying attention. This is just kind of this is like a good primer, especially if you haven't heard this stuff before. Maybe this is like only your second or third time hearing this stuff. She's doing a pretty good job of like explaining like, here's what we believe, like here's what we think about like the development of our party and stuff like that.
Very apparent. We're not, you know, taking this revolutionary party and saying the state is going to become this party. The revolutionary party is creating the conditions to allow the workers to decide what state will work for them. And I think that might take us on to the second article.
First, agitate. Oh, hello.
So
Hello,
the second
Nova.
article is a little bit more modern, but if you read it, you may have noticed it's still a little outdated because Trump is not in office, and that article was written right around his inauguration or something like that. So more modern, but still a little older. And I just want to say a few thoughts about that. One, Trump may not be in office anymore, but this article is still very important for where we're at. Just because Trump is out of office does not mean that there are not massive numbers of people behind a reactionary, fascist, nationalist, and inherently capitalist political force in our country right now. And I think that this article highlighted
Nationalist, inherently
why
capitalist.
socialist organization is crucial to fighting back against these ideas.
Little does she know, they
and
don't
fighting
like
for something
capitalism
better.
either.
And second, the Democrats aren't even better. Biden may be in office, but what has fundamentally, materially changed for the people, for us,
Democrats aren't
during
better
this
than
change
Trump.
of administration? There are a lot of failed campaign promises once again. So anyway, without further ado, the second article. I appreciate.
Hey, Jardum, thank you. Sorry, my internet died when I talked about the socialists destroying intimacy. I was referring to the idea of them making us mere units. They don't want to make us units, Jardum. They want us to all assimilate to the collective. That doesn't mean you won't have intimate human relationships. You still can have intimate human relationships. Polyamory is a thing. It's like everyone belongs to everyone else sort of thing. Like in Brave New World. But, like, they're not trying to make us all units of anything. They're trying to get us to all assimilate to the collective. Thank you for the super chat, though. I appreciate it.
The article for listing these three kind of main points, which I think are really...
Guys, I am but $8 away. $8 away from my super chat goal for tonight. If you feel like contributing to the Carlin is going on a vacation fund, please feel free to send in a super chat. We will be announcing stuff about the vacation at 11 p.m. Eastern time tonight on Goon Squad on Twitter, apparently, I'm told. And so if you want to know what's going on, you can come and listen to Siggy talk about that tonight, and I'm going to be on it as well. So you can come and hear us talk about it tonight because it's going to be awesome, okay?
Really great takeaways, and I think that they really build off of the first article as well. First, what do we got to do? We got to agitate. We must do everything we can. I think the article explained it as like agitating against attacks from the Republican Party and like aggressive mechanisms of the state and fighting back against the concessions that the Democratic Party gives to those right-wing efforts as well. Agitating against that. And second, educating. The article said, all socialists share a common duty
Yay!
to educate a new generation of
Thanks,
activists
Rebecca.
about what those who have thought
Yay! Everyone's contributing to the vacation fund now. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Sid the Cat. Guys, just because we have smashed our goal for the night, people can still send me money. Just so you guys know, you can still send me money. The more money you guys send me, the more cool stuff we'll do. Thank you guys for helping me not go insane. I appreciate all of you.
Before us have to teach us. And it really made me think about how I never learned about any history of socialist organizing in any kind of public school. And it made me think that the state is not going to teach us how to overthrow it, like at all. The state is not going to teach us how to overthrow it. And it is therefore our responsibility to learn, to share, to organize, to educate. So yeah, that was an important takeaway from me.
Thank you, Jane. I had a profitable day spreading the love. Thank you, Jane. I appreciate it.
And then the third point, sustaining the movement. We organize in the short term, but we have to sustain and build long-term struggles. And I think that's a hard part, and that's a part that we're still like figuring out, you know, how to do. I don't know how to make pictures show up. For some reason, none of my, I had a picture there, but it didn't show up. It was a picture of Biden as the Grim Reaper. I'm sorry to disappoint. But
we can all imagine it.
I'll see if I can find it, and we'll like post it to the Instagram later or something. But beyond those first 3 points, and kind of building on the idea of sustaining the movement, this article touched on the need for us to build mass movements. And Marx's insight that was quoted in the article or mentioned in the article was that workers and the oppressed must develop their own movements and struggles, and they must control their own political parties and organizations in order to liberate themselves from the for-profit system. And I really like that. You know, it comes back to the idea of we're responsible for our own emancipation and education. And but that doesn't mean we have to do it alone. Just because we're responsible doesn't mean it's a solitary individualistic thing. And that's where things like United Fronts come in. So like this article again is a little outdated, but this still is so relevant today, even under a Democratic president. Quoting from the article, we are in immediate need of united fronts to defend immigrants from deportation, safeguard abortion and reproductive rights, stand up against racist police violence, protect public education, fight for our unions, and save the planet. Still need those things today. That hasn't changed. And so what is a united front? There's a little definition there for you on the screen. A united front is a group of organizations working together on common and agreed upon demands and actions. And so the cool thing about united fronts is you can work together without hiding your politics and without controlling one another's political messages. You know, we can, as the SRS, join in with other groups who are doing different work, and like the housing coalition that we're a part of, which is called Cancel the Rent. If you don't know about it, you can look it up. But yeah, united fronts are really cool. And if you have questions, we can talk about them more in the discussion section. So I'll try to wrap this up quickly here for y'all. But basically the article, and we talk about not collaborating with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the death of social movements. And the picture that would have been on the screen was a picture of Biden as the Grim Reaper and all of his campaign promises that the
Democratic Party is the death of social movements. It's almost like they don't like the Democratic Party.
He did not do, that he killed with his scythe. Is that what the Grim Reaper has? I can't remember. Actually, one more thing I had for this slide was a quote from the article about Bernie Sanders, who works as like a self-proclaimed democratic socialist, I believe, working within the Democratic Party. He described the Democratic Party as a top-down party. And
wait, guys. Now, Deborah looks like an older woman, so we're not going to be too mean to Deborah. But Deborah doesn't know what the fuck is going on. Deborah thinks we're socialists. Deborah also doesn't know that China is not communist. China is way too close to capitalism for socialists. Hey, thanks, Chardum. Isn't sexless... Who said anything about sexless? They have sex all the time, Chardum. No one has ever said anything about sexless, Jardum. Again, you gotta listen. You gotta listen. No one said anything about a sexless society. Literally, no one said that. They fuck all the time. They have more sex than you do. Deborah, girl, let's talk. Which conservative influencers are you listening to, Deborah, that have convinced you that China is a communist society? Because it ain't real socialists. Deborah, do you consistently walk into classes that other people are teaching about socialism and just disrupt them to yell at people? Do you think we're social? Is she still here, or am I yelling at myself? Hang on. Is she still here? Yeah, Deborah's still here. Deborah, we're waiting. We're waiting, girl. We're waiting. Do you consistently go into classes where people are trying to learn about as much about the left as possible so we can beat them? And do you yell at them for being socialists? Is that what's happening? Deborah, we're being nice to you, but you were the one that came in and interrupted my class, so I think that we deserve some answers here. We're all just sitting here trying to learn about socialism, trying to learn what real socialists believe. We're not retards like people who listen to conservative pundits talk about things they don't understand. So why did you come in and interrupt my class to yell at us? We're waiting, Deborah. We're waiting. She's still here? She's keeping quiet now. Yeah. Keeping quiet now. Deborah, do you understand that we're openly and unapologetically anti-communist? Do you understand that you just came in and yelled at a bunch of people who don't actually support the left, who are probably further right than you are, Deborah? I guarantee you, Deborah, I'm actually further right than you are. Deborah, are you in the Moms for Liberty? Is that what's going on here? Because we do tend to find that Moms for Liberty do tend to be rather retarded. Deborah, we're waiting because you came in and interrupted our class, girl. Why are you against people learning about what the far left is doing, Deborah? Why are you trying to disrupt that? Yeah, I'm kind of suspecting that this might be a James Lindsay troll because James Lindsay's audience are retarded. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I think that Deborah probably fits in very well with James Lindsay's audience, doesn't she? Doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about, calls everyone that disagrees with her a leftist, has no idea what the real left is doing in the real world. Well, okay, Verl, you might be a Nazi, but most of us are not. Okay, don't associate that with. I don't bother you about being a National Socialist. I don't bother you about it because you want to learn about the left, and that's good enough for me. But most of us aren't. Come on, don't give me a fucking reputation, bro. Come on, Deborah, we're still waiting, girl. Why did you come in and disrupt my class to yell at us? We know you're in the chat. I really do think I'm owed some sort of explanation about why Deborah came in our class to yell at us. We were just hanging out, having a good time. The entire chat is yelling at Deborah now. Not a single communist in my chat tonight, Deborah, by the way. Yeah, Deborah got quiet real quickly, didn't she? Got quiet real quickly. All right, well, maybe Deborah will stick around and maybe she'll learn some stuff. But Deborah, if you keep being disruptive in my class, I'm going to ban you, okay?
The article kind of explains that Sanders' view of the socialist movement is through participating in the Democratic Party and working within its structures in the hopes of pressing it to adopt more progressive policies. But that doesn't happen. We see a lot of people in progressive social movements get into the Democratic Party, get into spaces, and then pretty quickly, as the article kind of touches on, starts catering to their donors and corporate donors specifically. And so that is why we do not collaborate with the Democratic Party. But on the need for working class org.
You know what? Listen, I think I'm being very kind by only calling James's audience retarded. There are many things I could call James's audience. I really think I'm on my best behavior, because you're right, Rationalist. The repeated slander campaigns against me show a level of malice that does go beyond a low IQ, because James is not stupid. James might be acting like a retard. That doesn't mean he's actually a retard. James knows exactly what he's doing. And I feel like I'm owed some Carlin is right super chats, because I tried to tell people over a year ago, I said, James is lying, James is lying, James is lying, James is lying, James is lying. And like most of my people in my chat at that point were like, no, Carlin, James isn't lying. He just doesn't know. And I was like, I promise you, James is lying. James is smarter than this. I promise you he's lying. And over the course of a year, when I showed James lying over and over and over and over and over again, then people finally came around. They were like, oh shit, Carlin, you were right about James. I'm like, I know. I told you he was lying. You didn't want to listen because you wanted to believe the best in him. No, he's lying.
Organizing.
This is almost over.
This
We got one more.
last little quote is just the last one from the article that I really, really enjoyed and thought was good. So I will just read it, and that will be that. The point is that building socialist organization cannot begin within the confines of the American electoral law and then work backwards from that. Instead, we must build up social movements and unions that eventually grow powerful enough to challenge and break the bipartisans' duopoly lock on politics.
Unions. We must build up social movements and unions that eventually grow powerful enough to challenge and break the bipartisan duopoly's lock on politics. Guys, all unions are socialist. That doesn't mean that everyone in a union is a socialist, because a lot of people are required to be in unions that they quite frankly don't even want to be in. So I'm not suggesting that anyone who is a member of a union is a socialist, but all unions are themselves socialist organizing apparatus. Does everyone understand that?
Got to break the lock. All right. Let me stop our little recording.
All right. I think that's it. That's it for that one. We got one more to go. One more class to go. One more. We got one more 20-minute class left to go. The political tradition of the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. We are cooking tonight, guys. We're only 3 hours in so far. We got a lot of content done. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the chat. If you have not yet mounted the like button, please do mount the like button. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I hope I will earn your subscription tonight. As a reminder, I stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We do Socialism Saturdays on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. This is the only place on the internet where you're going to be able to watch the real radical revolutionary far left and have it broken down from an anti-communist perspective, because I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I think they suck. I am farther right than most people, just like provably. Like into a pretty severe place. So we are not communists. We are not socialists. We're against all that bullshit, but we understand them, because the only way to defeat your enemy is to understand what they're saying. Benjamin Jackson! Thank you for the $10 super sticker. We are at 150% of our goal for the night, but if you guys want to keep sending me money, that would be pretty great. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, I will take your money. Will I be doing any Twitter spaces tonight? I'm glad you asked, Rationalist. I will be doing a Twitter space tonight. I will be going on Goon Squad at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, where Siggy and I will be discussing our vacation adventure. There'll be other people involved too, but Siggy is the host of Goon Squad, so it'll be mostly him, I think. But yeah, if you want to hear about the vacation, come to Goon Squad tonight. And we're going to talk about the adventure. So far as it's been planned, which is to say not that much, honestly. Not too much has been planned, but we will be talking about it tonight at 11 p.m. And I will tweet that out, okay? All right, let's get into our last... No, I don't know. I don't think so. No. We are going to start some rumors, so I'll tell you that. Okay, let's get into our last presentation. The political tradition of the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists.
Start our little recording. So yeah, thanks for joining us, folks. My name's Scout. My pronouns are they, them. I'm with SRS, and I'm going to kick us off tonight. Yeah, so SRS is a educational and action group that stands in the Marxist tradition of Lenin, Luxemburg, and Trotsky, which Steve is going to get into tonight more on our presentation. And we are based on the ancestral lands of the Duwamish people. So I'm going to give a little Duwamish land acknowledgement for those of us who are on Duwamish land in Seattle. And I know we have a few folks joining us from other places, but I would like to acknowledge that we are on the land, the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. And for those of us who maybe weren't here last week, if you want to check out more, you can go to Real Rent Duwamish or check out the Duwamish tribe online. But Steve is going to give us a little presentation tonight about the SRS and the political traditions on the left and where we fit in. And we'll have that and some discussion time, and then we'll take a break around 8 o'clock for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and discuss and ask questions, all that good stuff. And yeah, sound good, Steve?
Sounds good.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so as industrial capitalism really picked up in the 1800s, the horrors of it were amazing. I mean, people lived in slums, and they died early, and lots of child poverty and poverty in general. Some people in Britain became reformers and decided that the problem was private property, and there needed to be an elimination of private property, and they supported some form of communism or socialism. Marx had come into that movement when he was in Germany and went along with that movement. However, he looked for what force it was objectively in society that could bring about a transformation from capitalism to socialism. And he looked to the working class, the modern industrial proletariat, those who work for a wage or a salary, those who actually produced the wealth of capitalism and were therefore exploited by capitalism, but also had the collective power to transform the economy in a more positive direction. So this is why he looked to the working class as the class that could bring about a transformation. Workers had an interest in abolishing capitalism because they were exploited by it, but also because they were exploited, but also because with their power, with their ability to transform the economy, they could actually produce a different kind of society. So this led to Marxism being called by many people, including a guy named John Molyneux, a British socialist, the theory and practice of international proletarian or working class revolution. So this is the key thing about Marxism. It was not just an abstract philosophy or an analysis of economics, but it was a political movement for the interests of the working class as a class that can transform society. So this is the kind of red thread that runs through the history of Marxism. We can look at how closely different tendencies are toward the original ideas of Marxism by looking at its relationship to the interests and power of the working class. Another way to look at this is socialism from below, or what Marx called the self-emancipation of the working class. That is, workers would have to create the socialist society. It could not happen from above, from a nice dictator or a parliament or whatever. So the first kind of division among people who were into communism or socialism was between socialists and anarchists. The anarchists did not believe that the economic system was the fundamental source of oppression, but instead the state was, or authority. So their orientation was to get rid of authority, get rid of the state. It was not to create working class power, that is, overthrow the state and create a worker state, which could then transform society. Instead, it was just getting rid of the state immediately. So this was a difference The Marxists believed that workers needed to smash the old state, but they needed to create their own worker state, a democratic organization which would organize society and move towards communism. That the capitalists, once they were overthrown, would not just pack up and walk away. They would have to be continued to be suppressed until all classes were finally eliminated, and then the state could wither, the worker state could wither away. So this is kind of the difference between socialists and anarchists. Soon after that, mass supposedly Marxist parties were formed in Germany, France, and other places. In Germany, it was the Social Democratic Party. And they believed in political action. They believed in electing people to office. So they disagree with the anarchists on that point. However, over time, they became more and more accommodated to the political system as they elected more people to office. And they began to think that they could reform the system instead of having a workers' revolution. They could just elect better people, pass better laws, and there would be a transition to socialism using the current capitalist state.
So yeah, so what they're talking about is like they're not talking about the National Socialists, but they're not talking about the Nazis. So what they're saying is that like socialists in Germany started getting elected to like positions, and they started and once what they're basically saying is like once socialists got into elected office, they started like capitulating to the state and believing that they could reform the state instead of just like smashing it entirely. And it was a function of them like their perspective changed once they got into like elected office,
rather than smashing that state and creating a worker state. So like this came to a head during World War I, when the so-called socialist parties that had supposedly followed Marx gave up on internationalism and instead adopted nationalism.
Hang on. Have you noticed any commonality in personality type in all your observations of the presentations that is drawn to this belief? You're looking for me to say that they're mentally ill, and I'm not going to. I think that's what you're trying to get at. You're looking at me to say that they're mentally ill, and I'm not going to. Have I No, I haven't, to be honest. Listen, the people who are drawn to the far left cult of socialism and communism, there are commonalities, but it has nothing to do with their personality. They're not antisocial. They don't have borderline personality disorder. They're not narcissists. They're not any of those things. That's all conservative bullshit talking points. None of that is real. Stop blaming this on mental illness. It is not about mental illness. Many of these people are second to third generation. Okay, so I apologize if you're not taking that angle, but most people do. So I apologize if I'm making an incorrect assumption. But many of these people are second and third generation socialists. Many of these people had socialist parents. Many of these people had socialist grandparents. This is the ideology that they were raised in. In addition to that, the K through 12 public schools have been teaching this stuff since the 60s. And they've been teaching it in virtually every single class, starting at 5 years old, in every school district in the country from round about 2008, 2009, 2010 on. But it's been in the public schools for as long as most of us have been alive. It's been in the public schools since the 60s, okay? But it kept getting more and more and more and more and more. And so now we're in a position that not only do most socialists have parents or grandparents that were also socialists, so they were raised in the ideology, but even if that's not true, kids are getting indoctrinated into the educational system from the time they're 5 years old, and they're being indoctrinated into a cult. That is what's going on. This is not a personality type. I don't care what Thomas Sowell said. I don't give a fuck. You want to know why? Thomas Sowell hasn't done the type of real world research that I've done. So any assumptions that he's making are not going to be correct. I'm sorry. He has never done this type of research. He never did this type of research. This is not what Thomas Sowell did. So the answer is these people have been indoctrinated into a cult. They've been indoctrinated into a cult by their parents and their grandparents. They've been indoctrinated into a cult by the public school system. And that is no. You want me to get, I'm not going to change my answer just because you do. Okay, Verdon, please repeat the answer that I gave you. Verdon, I want you to repeat in my chat the answer that I gave you. I want to make sure you actually heard the answer I gave you, because I think that you're so desperate for me to give you an answer that I'm not going to give you, that you keep arguing with me, and I don't think you actually listened to the answer that I gave you. So please, for me, because you're taking my time trying to explain this to you, I want to make sure you actually are listening. Please repeat in my chat the answer that I gave you. We'll wait. No, the end goal of anarchists and communists is not the same. No, it's not. Verdon, we're waiting for you to repeat the answer that I just gave you so that I know that you actually listened. You said this is about, that's not the answer that I gave you. Keep going, keep elaborating. What did I say? What did I say specifically? I explained to you explicitly how this worked. What did I say? Were you listening or were you waiting to talk? Keep elaborating on what I explained to you. Because I gave you 2 pieces of information that are critical that I don't know that you understand. And if you don't know what I said to you, you need to say, I'm very sorry, Carlin, I wasn't listening. Can you please explain again? We're waiting. What did I say to you specifically? This, guys, is what happens when you come into my chat and you ask me questions and you don't listen to me. You get put on the spot because I know when you're not listening to me. I've been doing this a long time. I did this in corporate training for a long-ass time. I know when people aren't listening to me and I know when they are. If I heard correctly, this is done through schooling at an early age and passed out. Yes. Okay. All right. Very close. Very close. Okay. Hey, listen. I mean, you got it pretty close. What I said is that most socialists today are 2nd or 3rd generation socialists. They learn this ideology from their parents and their grandparents. It was also reinforced or even introduced in the public school system, where the public school system is now training everyone in this ideology from the time they're 5 years old. But this has been in the public school system since the 60s. Okay? That's where this is coming from. This is not a personality thing. This is not a way the brain works thing. This is not about having any sort of mental illness. This is about these people have been indoctrinated into a cult from the time they were very, very young. That is what this is about.
They actually, like the German Social Democratic Party, the French, etc., supported their own governments in the war. So they became nationalists rather than internationalists, rejecting one of the basic principles of Marxism, as before they had already rejected another basic principle.
Thank you for listening. I
which
appreciate
was revolution. So after World War, or during World War II, I should say, there was a revolution in Russia where a revolutionary Marxist party, the Bolshevik Party, organized the overthrow of the state in Russia and led the move towards a new worker state, which was, the new worker state in Russia was organized by the Soviets, or workers' councils. These were democratically elected bodies that were able to organize the economy and the society. And so for a brief period of time in Russia, there was a democratically run worker state where workers actually ran things democratically. However, that society was surrounded and attacked by foreign 17.
There is no such thing as anarcho-communism. They're going to set up their own version of a governing body, which he is literally explaining to you right now. The whole idea of anarcho-communism is not real. They're going to say, he's literally explaining to you right now, in Russia, they set up their own governing body. When socialists and communists say they want to smash the state, what they mean is the capitalist U.S. government, the capitalist state. They are not talking about the state like you think of it. They are talking about the capitalist state. What he literally just explained, and we'll rewind it just for you because you were typing in the chat to argue with me instead of listening. What he literally just said is, in Russia, they set up their own governing body. That is what anarcho-communism looks like. It does not look like having no governing body. Let's rewind, just for you. Got to make sure you heard it.
Revolution in Russia, where a revolutionary Marxist party, the Bolshevik Party, organized the overthrow of the state in Russia and led the move towards a new worker state, which was
a new workers' state. Oh, it was never about smashing the state. It was only about smashing capitalism. Oh.
The new worker state in Russia was organized by the Soviets, or workers' councils. These were democratically elected bodies that were able to organize the economy and the society. And so for a brief period of time in Russia, there was a democratically run worker state where workers actually ran things democratically. However, that society was surrounded and attacked by 17 different foreign armies, including the United States, which invaded Russia, along with European powers. And as a result of that and the economic blockade, Russia was cut off. And it was not able to really begin the transition to socialism in a big way. In fact, what happened is the working class was decimated, was driven back to the countryside, was killed off in the Civil War. So instead of workers' power in Russia, a new ruling group began to take power, a bureaucracy, which was led by Joseph Stalin. So this new bureaucracy actually took power and reversed some of the gains of the revolution. For example, during the Bolshevik period, in the early part of the revolution, there was the right to abortion, the right to homosexuality, etc. These were reversed by Stalin so that they became illegal. Workers' control of industry was reversed. Internationalism was reversed in the sense that Stalin started to make deals with foreign powers rather than trying to spread revolution. So there's a fundamental transformation of what happened. There was a counter-revolution in Russia under the leadership of Stalin and the new bureaucracy.
One
of the main problems with that, however, was that Stalin was not honest about it. The bureaucracy was not honest about it. They said this is
okay. What is your question? What's your question? When did the whole generation become so anti-trans along with the rise of TERFdom? They're not anti-trans. What are you talking about? They're not anti-trans at all. I mean, they want everyone to be non-binary, bro. Socialists want everyone to be non-binary. They want everyone to be they, them, or not adhere to the gender binary or the patriarchy. They want to abolish the patriarchy altogether, which they believe creates like the nuclear family and stuff like that. So they're not. I don't know why you think they're anti-trans, but they're not. That doesn't even make sense.
This is Marxism. This is, it used to be internationalism, now it's nationalism. It used to be women's liberation, now it's socialist motherhood. It used to be
socialist motherhood. What's that?
The right of people to homosexuality. Now it's let's uphold the family again.
Okay, bro, I don't think you're hinged into what we're talking about here. The radical revolutionary left is not anti-trans. They're not anti-trans in any way. They believe that capitalism created the gender binary. The gender binary is men and women. They believe that in order to abolish capitalism, they have to abolish the gender binary, which means they want to abolish men and women. So I don't think you're hinged into what we're talking about here. I'm really sorry. I would recommend sitting back and listening. This is an entire show about the left. So now you're just being disruptive and asking questions that have nothing to do with anything. I don't like that. Cut it out. I'm pretty sure he actually does think that. I'm pretty sure. All right, you're going in a timeout. If you keep disrupting my chat, you're going to be banned.
Those kind of things. It used to be democracy, and now it's bureaucratic control. So that's what Stalinism represented as Marxism. And unfortunately, throughout most of the world, when people thought of communism or Marxism, they thought of Stalinism. There was a counter tendency to that, and that was led by Leon Trotsky, who had been a leader in the early years of the Russian Revolution. He tried to maintain the principles of the original Bolshevik Party. Oh, excuse me. The discussion will not be recorded. It's only the talk that's being recorded. So anyway, he tried to maintain the original principles of the Russian Revolution: internationalism, liberation for the oppressed, democracy, et cetera, and he set up groups around the world to push that. However, that was very much a minority tendency, and most people thought of Stalinism as Marxism. Now, after World War II, Trotsky actually was assassinated by Stalin's agent in 1940. After World War II, the Stalinist bureaucracy was able to take over Eastern Europe and set up states that were very similar to what existed in Russia. That was top-down, bureaucratic, without workers' control, et cetera. So that's what was. So that's what happened after World War II. So this presented the Trotskyist movement with a dilemma. They could either stick with Trotsky's original idea that Russia was still some kind of a worker state, or they could understand that there had been a transformation. And the tendency out of which we come believed that Russia had become state capitalist. That is, the state owned the economy, but the state itself was run by a bureaucratic ruling class. And that was true of Eastern Europe as well as Russia, and later China, Cuba, et cetera. So this was our analysis at the time. And we thought that analysis best represented the idea of self-emancipation of the working class. You could not have a worker state like in Eastern Europe where workers had never made a revolution. And because self-emancipation of the working class is the core of Marxism. So today, of course, that's now 30 years since the Cold War. So the key issues today on the left are the following: the real nature of socialism, that is a rejection of Stalinism; internationalism, solidarity with the working class people around the world, all over the world, and opposition to imperialism all over the world, or to ruling classes all over the world. So we don't support any of the rival ruling classes in the world. Instead, we support worker struggle everywhere. So that's the key thing about internationalism as part of Marxism. We unite the fight against exploitation and oppression. That is, we believe that, as the early Bolsheviks did, that the working class movement, the socialist movement, has to directly take on the fight against any form of oppression. Has to be active in the fight against, for example, against racism, sexism, et cetera. And that these fights are not separate, that they need to be integrated into the fight against exploitation. This differs from other people on the left. One wing are the people who believe in class reductionism. That is, they believe that if you just push forward demands that impact the whole working class, then eventually oppressed people will be raised up. So they, support Medicare for all, public housing, free college tuition. All of these things are great, we're all for them, but they think that's enough. Whereas we believe there needs to be a direct fight for, against oppression, for things like Black Lives Matter, affirmative action, reparations, etc. So we believe that these fights need to be consolidated. The other thing is there are people among there are people on the left who believe that separate fights can bring about the end of oppression. We don't believe that that's possible, that capitalism itself has to be overthrown to get rid of oppression. We also
Capitalism
have a
has to be overthrown to get rid of oppression.
That is, we understand that unions are a very positive thing.
Oh, hang on. They're going to talk about the unions. Hang on. Again.
There are people on the left who believe that separate fights can bring about the end of oppression. We don't believe that that's possible, that capitalism itself has to be overthrown to get rid of oppression.
Capitalism itself has to be overthrown to get rid of oppression. That's all oppression. Capitalism has to be overthrown to get rid of racism, to get rid of sexism, to get rid of the patriarchy, to get rid of transphobia, queerphobia, whatever phobia, to get rid of climate change. Capitalism has to be overthrown to get rid of to have reproductive justice. Capitalism has to be overthrown. In order to get rid of the police, the capitalism has to be overthrown. Except all forms of oppression. Thank you, Brown Barbaloop, for the sticker. I appreciate it.
We also have a rank and file orientation within the unions. That is, we understand that unions are a very positive thing for workers. They help to raise their wages and working conditions. But within the unions, a bureaucracy develops which negotiates contracts, and therefore it has its own separate interests from those of the workers. And so we need workers need to organize themselves independently to fight for their own interests within the unions. We also believe in class independence, as Marx did from the very beginning. That is, the working class needs its own parties and movements, and we therefore do not support any of the bourgeois parties, the capitalist parties, Democrats, Republicans, etc., because they are all fighting in the interests of the capitalist class and not the working class. So we don't support candidates of the ruling class party.
We don't support candidates of the ruling class parties, including the Democratic Party. This is literally the third time they've said this tonight. But no, James Lindsay is still confused, still telling everyone Kamala Harris is a communist. No, real communists disagree. 3 times tonight, they've disagreed.
And finally, we believe in the need for a revolutionary party that can organize the fight for workers' power. That is, if workers are not organized to fight for workers' power, they won't be able to achieve it. So then briefly, let me just discuss some of the other groups on the left in Seattle. There are many others, but just to touch on a few. Party of Socialism and Liberation is what we call campist. That is, they support the anti-US imperialist camps in the world. That is China, Assad in Syria, etc. And so that this is a rejection of Marx's idea of real internationalism. DSA is probably the most prominent socialist group in the US with 100,000 members. They have a lot of different tendencies and there are revolutionaries within it and so forth. But DSA as a whole fights for or supports the Democratic Party and elections as the way to bring about socialism rather than revolution. The various communist parties in the United States come from a Stalinist tradition, socialism from above, and they have, for the most part,
Maria, I'm sorry, girl. I can't, I'm not, if I didn't see your tweet, I'm not going to like your tweet. I haven't seen it yet. I have barely been on Twitter today. Like, calm down.
Moved over to supporting the Democratic Party. The Freedom Socialist Party here in Seattle is very supportive of China, for example. It is anti-Black nationalist to an extreme, in the sense that the way we look at Black nationalism, it's not going to be able to finally achieve liberation for Black people, getting rid of the system and so forth. But it does lead, or has led, and often will lead, the fights against racism. And to the extent that it does that, we should support it. whereas the FSP doesn't believe in that. The FSB also wants to replace the Revolutionary Party, like go into coalition and push for the coalition to take up way too many demands instead of focusing those demands. The Revolutionary Communist Party is basically a cult around Bob Levakian that's refused fascism. You might have run into.
The Revcoms are a cult. We have never covered the Revcoms because that, honestly, that is exactly the impression that I have of the Revcoms. I have that. I agree with him. I think that the Revcoms are like a cult. People ask me about the Revcoms all the time, and I'm like, I don't even want to cover them. They're not relevant on the far left. Like, no one ever talks about them. This is literally the first time that I've ever heard them mention the Revcoms, and they're saying like, yeah, we really don't like the Revcoms. That's funny.
The Revolutionary Communist Party is basically a cult around Bob Levakian that's refused fascism. You might have run into. They were pro-Biden during the last election. That's pro-Democratic Party, and they fundamentally support socialism from above. That is being in the Maoist tradition. The U.S. Socialist Workers Party at this point was a Trotskyist organization. But is now pro-Zionist, that supports Israel. It has moved away from Trotskyism and towards Stalinism, and actually tries to accommodate to right-wing populism in the United States, which is very strange. And finally, the Socialist Alternative, which of course has Thomas Sawant as a council member in Seattle. And of course, we supported Sawant's election. We think it's good to have a socialist on the council. However, they are fundamentally reformist as well. They believe that you can use the state to gradually bring about or rapidly bring about a transformation to socialism. So they have a very strong electoral orientation, and they have given some support to the Democratic Party as well.
Hang on. Mr. Hat. Carlin, under their utopia, are voluntary transactions of goods or services permitted? There's no money. So, I mean, yeah, you can barter. They're not going to prevent you from bartering, but you can't own a business, and there's no money, and you're going to get assigned a job, and you don't have any choice about what that job is, and so you have to go do that job. And so if you have extra time left over and you want to provide goods and services to people, I mean, hey, go do it, but what are they going to pay you in? Because it's not going to be money. Oh, bro, do you think we're communists? Are you under the impression that we're communists? Is that why you're saying commies suck? Yeah, see, that won't work, will it?
So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The so that's I'm sure that's a lot for people. So if people have questions, be sure to let's get those out on the table first, and then we can move on to more discussion.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
I think that's it. We made it. This is a relatively lackluster week. I got to be honest. I feel like this was just like a light week. I feel like we did get some clips. Did anyone learn something tonight? Did people learn something tonight? Did everyone have fun? We made it. 3.5 hours of socialism, a light socialism evening. Well, guys, tomorrow we are going to be doing movie night in my supporter Discord. Hey, thanks, Alex. Thank you, Alex, my friend. I do appreciate it. Look at that. 160% of the super chat goal for the night. You guys are enabling my vacation fund. I appreciate that. Guys, as a reminder, I do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. where we watch real radical revolutionary socialists. Tonight was like a light night, if I'm honest about it. It was a light night, and I kind of like that. Now, tomorrow I do take Sundays off from streaming. But we will be having movie night in my supporter Discord at 8 p.m. We're going to be watching Mars Attacks. Is that what we're watching? Mars Attacks? We're watching some movie about I'm pretty sure it's Mars Attacks. Is that the name of that movie? We're watching some alien movie at 8 p.m. in my supporter Discord. Jennifer picked it out. I'm not held responsible for nothing, but I'm pretty sure it's Mars Attacks. Anyway, If you want to join us in the supporter Discord, how you get access to that is by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com, and you have to sign up as a member for $8 a month or $80 a year. And tomorrow I will be sending out an email that looks like this. It won't be this email because this is last week's email. It'll be tomorrow's email, and when you get that email, you scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath that red box, you are going to find access to a variety of perks. You're going to find access to my supporter Discord. You're going to find access to our Zoom call that we do on Monday. You're going to find access to a 10% off coupon in the Unwoke Art Store. And if there are any other perks, you will find access under there. That is my weekly email that goes out on Sundays as part of my Substack. And you guys, when you guys fund my work, you do help fund what I do, and you help keep me in business. I cannot do it without you. I am 100% funded by you. So the super chats, the Substack, the merch store, that all pays for all of this, guys. That is all how I do this, and you guys keep me in business, and so I really do appreciate it. And of course, please head over to the merch store if you want some sweet Halloween merch. We've got our yard signs that you can still get them in time for Halloween, so you can have all sorts of kids coming through your yard to do trick-or-treating, and they're going to get a message that says Marxism is evil and the public schools should be abolished. I think this is exactly the message that kids should be getting. If I'm honest about it, where are they getting that? They're not getting that in school. You can also get the limited edition Halloween collection shirts, only available in the month of October. We've got Marxism is Coming for Your Soul. We've got collectivism. We've got everyone is equal until they're not. And then we've got the bestseller of October so far, which is The Marxist Utopia of the Dead. And you can get that in t-shirts in a variety of colors. You can get them in sweatshirts in different colors. You can get them on pint glasses. You can get them on mugs. You can get them on stickers. All of that is my special Halloween limited edition line, and that is only going to be available in the month of October. So head over there, get them now if you want them, and you'll still get them in time for Halloween, and they look cool otherwise. I mean, come on. I just ordered myself one of these the other day, like the collectivism shirt in red. It looks sick. Come on. It looks good. You know you want it. It looks like an old school horror movie poster. And so I appreciate everyone that's been making merch purchases as well. That is all on unwokeart.com. And that's all I got. I'm going to go do some writing. I will be doing a Twitter space at 11 p.m. called Goon Squad, in which you will learn about my epic vacation adventure, apparently, according to Siggy, who wants to talk about it tonight. I tried to keep this a secret. I wanted to do a big reveal for the vacation. But Siggy was like, no, we're talking about it. And I was like, and you guys better get ready, because I'm telling you, you thought the rumor factory was running before. The rumor factory is about to go into overdrive. I'll tell you what. I already know exactly how this is going to play out. But you know what? Fuck them. I don't really care. You want to know why? Because I do what I want. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate everyone. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys. Take care.
How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.